All right, guys, welcome to Press X Podcast episode 41. Thank you guys so much for being here. Hopefully, everything is streaming smoothly this time, as we did run into some technical issues last week. I also want to give a quick shout out to Brad Hayden. Welcome to the channel, buddy. Thank you so much for becoming a channel member and choosing to support me directly. Really do appreciate that. Look forward to your exclusive perks. And so, yeah, a huge shout out as usual to all of my channel members. We have Sir Speaks a Lot here, front and center, saying, yeah, that's great and all, but what about the feet? I don't know, Sir Speaks a Lot. I don't know, but thank you for being here. Thank you for the super chat. We have a lot of really good topics to go over and discuss in this episode of the podcast. There's a lot going on. There are actually quite a few things here that I didn't get a chance to talk about and discuss with you guys in separate videos. I may actually put them in videos coming up this week. It really depends. But either way, for those of you who are here listening to this, we do have a lot to talk about. And I think you guys are going to enjoy this episode. I know I'm going to have fun talking about some of these topics. So, yeah, we have about 450 people here already, which is awesome. If you guys could do me a favor, hit that like button. Really helps the stream out, helps the podcast out a lot. Let's see if we can get it to 200 likes. I wouldn't ask if it didn't actually make a difference. So thank you guys for that. I do want to let you know that I am showcasing some merch at the top of the live chat. So if you want to give it a look over, it's the updated Press X podcast logo. I probably will have a different version of it at some point. Right now, it's just the, straight across the chest Press X podcast. So if you do like this podcast and you want to help support it directly, that is another way for you to do that. So check it out. Yeah, just trying to get through all the little stuff here before we dive into these topics. I do want to remind everybody, for those who are not aware, there are different membership tiers now. I did update them recently, and I did update the perks. One of the new perks I am offering members is early access to select videos. I do daily content, so it's not realistic for me to offer early access every single time I release a new video. That just wouldn't work, but you will get occasional early access to some videos, and you get that on top of all of the other perks that are already there. DualSense controller, you're saying, is there any reason to buy an Xbox Series X? Their only flex has now turned into a massive L. Well, we're going to talk about that. That's actually going to be our first topic, not necessarily whether or not you should buy an Xbox Series X, although I do think that plays a pretty significant role in the general conversation. But my short answer is I'm not sure that there's many reasons, if any at all, to at least compelling reasons to go out there and try to get an Xbox Series X. In all honesty, I think right now the most appealing aspect of the Xbox Series X is most likely the fact that it's sold out and it's hard to get your hands on one right now. And so I think that in it of itself kind of makes it appealing to a lot of people, but maybe not necessarily for the reasons that you would think a next gen console would be considered appealing, right? So we're going to get into that. I'm going to give you a quick rundown of the topics that we're going to be discussing today. The first one is centered around the performance and the comparisons that have been happening, because we do have more AAA games that have been compared, PlayStation 5 version versus the Xbox Series X version. And I did make dedicated videos on this, but obviously there's more I want to say about it. And I know that you guys have a lot to say about it. And it's created quite the conversation, understandably so. So I do have more to say on that. We're also going to be talking about the Game Awards, because Sony has completely dominated this year's Game Awards. It's kind of crazy, actually. And so I want to certainly take some time to go over that. But on top of that, I don't just want to talk about what games are nominated and how many nominations each game is getting and why I think it's either well deserved or maybe not deserved. We're going to go over that. I also want to talk about how it's very, very likely that Sony has some surprises in store, or maybe a surprise. It really depends for this year's Game Awards. I think Sony is going to be showing up at the Game Awards in a very big way, and not just necessarily with the games that they have nominated, but with potential announcements and reveals they may have lined up. We're also talking about what Jim Ryan had to say about God of War Ragnarok and whether or not it will be cross-gen. Spoiler alert, he didn't have much to say. However, it does lead to a very interesting conversation, which is how long does Sony plan to support cross-gen games on the PlayStation 5? And, when it comes to their exclusives, is this something we can expect going forward? I want to have a discussion about that. I also want to talk about some other comments that Jim Ryan recently made, specifically about the console space and Sony's commitment to it and what we can expect potentially beyond the PlayStation 5. And I do think this is really important because anybody who's been following this channel for some time now, you know how much I enjoy console gaming, the traditional home console gaming experience. I think it's something special. I think it's something unique. And it's something that I want to continue to see thrive. And as I always say, not just merely survive and be relevant. And finally, we're going to be closing out the stream with a topic that I think a lot of you guys are going to be interested in. We have a new rumor surrounding a potential Metal Gear Solid remake of some sort or some type of Metal Gear game, and how it's seeming very likely that this is something Sony has in the works. It will be a PlayStation 5 exclusive. On top of that, you might be interested in knowing who's actually developing it. And finally, we're just going to have a general conversation kind of going off of that about how Sony seems to have many, many games behind the scenes that are in the works that we are going to be learning about over the next year or two. So October's very own, you're saying we're getting all these remakes and remasters, but where is the Twisted Metal remake / remaster? That's the only one I care about. OG fans deserve this. Come on, Sony. Yeah, I think Twisted Metal is a game that a lot of people would love to see remade or make some type of comeback in some way. I think there's a pretty good chance it will at some point. I don't necessarily know if that's one of the games that are in development behind the scenes that we don't know about. The last we heard about Twisted Metal directly from Sony, I believe, was them working on some type of TV show, if I'm not mistaken, because sometime last year, Sony announced that they opened a new division. It's a PlayStation TV / movie division, something that's going to kind of, help get their IP out there in a bigger way. So maybe that's, kind of a sign that Twisted Metal is still important to Sony to some extent. And because of that, we can maybe expect to see it return in some form. At the very least, you'll get maybe a TV show if it doesn't get, canceled in production or something. So we haven't heard anything about that. But thank you for that super chat, buddy. We're going to dive into the first topic, and this is going to be a good one because we are talking. Well, actually, you know what? Before I do that, I always forget. Let me bring up the gameplay. So you are going to see Demon Souls gameplay. This is my first time ever playing it. I was streaming it right through the PS5. I do have the face cam up, but I wanted to use this footage again because I meant to use it last week, but I was having technical issues because I was trying to stream it at 60 FPS. It just wasn't working. So now it should be streaming fine for you guys. Hopefully it's coming through smoothly. So enjoy that Demon Souls gameplay in the background. But diving into the first topic, guys, let's talk about the power narrative and how it has been completely turned upside down on its head. We know that Digital Foundry is continuing to do their comparisons. And let's be honest, Digital Foundry is not necessarily the be-all, end-all, but they are very good at what they do. And they don't seem to have any blatant favoritism when they are doing these comparisons. It's just them kind of letting you know what they're seeing, what the results are. And one of the things I appreciated most about the Dirt 5 comparison that they released yesterday was Richard Ledbetter, as they were trying to explain that it could be a bug, these dev kits or tools are coming in hot. and everything that's going on around the world. It's making it much more difficult for developers. These are all things that are true. However, he did say that at the end of the day, this is the retail code. These are retail games that are shipping out, so they have to judge them as that, as final finished products. I mean, yes, they will get updated, and that will make a big difference, but still, I did appreciate that because I think more people need to have that mentality where it's like, look, we can make all the excuses we want to make, and this goes both ways. This goes for Sony and Microsoft, but at the end of the day, you have to look at it for what it is, and it is a final product that they are selling for full price, right? That goes for both the consoles and the software. Poetry and Death, you're saying, I screenshotted my name in the MBG members just now, also playing Demon Souls while listening at the moment. Well, awesome, man. Thank you so much for that. I'm happy to hear that you're playing Demon Souls. That's a game that I think everybody needs to play. And if you caught my second Demon Souls stream, you'll know that I definitely was having a struggle for sure. But thank you so much for that super chat, buddy. We also have Nikolai, you're saying, hey, MBG, have you ever played the old Ape Escape games on PS1 and PS2? If so, would you also love a remaster of the trilogy for PS4 and PS5? Actually, believe it or not, I've never played an Ape Escape game in my life. In fact, I think the closest thing I've ever gotten to playing a proper Ape Escape game was a mini game in Metal Gear Solid 3. I know that Ape Escape was featured in that game to some extent. That's literally the only experience I have with it. Just being honest, it's not a game I'm familiar with or have ever played, but I think that there are a lot of people who would actually appreciate an Ape Escape remake or remaster. So thank you for that super chat. We also have Brandon. You're saying, yo, dude, sorry to interrupt the topic, but when are you streaming Demon Souls again? Always look forward to that, LOL. Honestly, I'm not sure, Brandon. You know, it's a tough call for me because I can only spread myself so thin. I want to make as much content for you guys as I can while still keeping up with the podcast. And, you know, my first Demon Souls stream took off and it did phenomenal for me, which I was really surprised about. The second one, to be completely blunt, didn't really do nearly as well. And it's not that I don't plan to play the game. It's just I'm not necessarily sure that I'm going to stream my entire playthrough. What I can say is that maybe we will do occasional streams here and there for games like Demon Souls, but what I can at the very least attempt to promise anyway is that anytime we get major new releases for games, I will try my best to stream my first couple of hours with those games. So, for example, Cyberpunk 2077 is coming out. I've been contemplating whether or not I want to stream that game. If not that game, certainly some of the bigger PlayStation exclusives. So hopefully that doesn't disappoint you too much. It's not that streaming won't play a role on the channel here. It's just it kind of has to be on a game-by-game basis. I don't necessarily know that I can dedicate enough time to streaming an entire playthrough of Demon Souls, especially considering I spent about 3.5 hours on a single boss during the last stream. So hopefully you understand. Work, gaming channel, you're saying I've been playing PS4 games on the PS5. It's amazing. Yeah, we've been hearing nothing but great things about PS4 titles running on the PS5. It is interesting to think that, you know, if you look back earlier this year, a lot of people were very nervous about what backwards compatibility was going to look like on the PS5, specifically with PS4 games. There was a lot of people feeling nervous that it was going to be terrible, it was going to be lacking. Some people even thought that it was just going to offer 100 or 200 games, but it seems that Sony really did a good job in, over delivering, I'd say. I think that that's the benefit that comes with them being so quiet is because Sony was so quiet, people automatically assume it's bad news. They're not talking more about backwards compatibility because things are going bad. They're having a hard time. But in reality, they just probably think, this isn't really the main selling point of the PS5. We'll talk about it more when we get closer to the launch. And look at where we are now. A lot of games like Days Gone and God of War and Ghost of Tsushima getting upgraded, running at 60 FPS, other games getting boosted, and most games just running perfectly fine. So I'm happy to hear that you're having a good time with that. But getting back on topic here, first it was Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition, okay? And the thing about that game is, yes, the Xbox Series X did have some slight, and I have to really emphasize just how slight these advantages were. I mean, you're talking maybe like an extra 5 to 10 frames beyond 60 FPS. That's worth emphasizing because it's not as if the PS5 was dipping below 60 FPS. That's not the case. Devil May Cry 5, there was a slight edge in most of the modes for that game, but then when you got to the high frame rate mode, the PS5 was outperforming the Xbox Series X by a significant degree, which was kind of interesting. And it stood out because to whereas the Series X was doing slightly better, maybe like 1 to 2, maybe 3% better in this mode, in that mode. What really stood out is when you get to the high frame rate mode and you see that there's a huge gap in a lot of different areas for the high frame rate mode where there's times where the PS5 is running at 120 frames per second perfectly, or maybe dropping to like 115. And some of these same areas running in the high frame rate mode on the Series X are struggling to hit 70 or 75 or even up to 90. And those are some pretty big differences there in the high frame rate mode for Devil May Cry. So we evaluated that and we thought, okay, that's definitely interesting and frankly unexpected. And Digital Foundry themselves said that we are seeing the PS5 currently defying expectations and punching above its weight. Then the big one came, right? The big one came, that being Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And boy, oh boy, were the results very interesting there, where the PS5 seems to be the more performant version. It has a more stable frame rate, less screen tearing, and more often than not, it's running at a slightly, ever so slightly higher resolution than the Series X. Now, I've said this many times. I don't think that this is indicative of a major difference that we're going to see going forward. Like, I don't think that over the next 6 to 12 months, we're going to be seeing games look way better and run way better on the PS5 compared to the Series X. To be honest, I don't think that's ever going to happen between these consoles. I think it's much more likely that games are going to start to look more and more similar and run very similar. I mean, to be completely honest, when you look at these early comparisons, there's really not many huge differences. And if there are, for example, with Dirt 5, that one was very interesting because Dirt 5, we're seeing possibly the biggest difference we've seen so far, that being in the resolution and just the overall level of detail, where when you're playing this game in the resolution mode, I believe the Xbox Series X version is just lacking, like, in a big way in just general detail. And Digital Foundry says it's more than likely it's a bug, but we don't know. And they did say the developers are aware of this. So, you see the excuses that are being used, which is, as I said, it's kind of understandable because you're talking about individuals where, they're going out there, they're buying these consoles for $500 with the promise that you're going to get the best looking and running multi-platform titles, especially for the bigger AAA games. Power, 12 T-flops, that's what we're selling you on right now. So it is understandable that a lot of these individuals who made this investment, they're kind of entering a denial mode or a defense mode. And I get that. I do. But at the same time, we have to call a spade here. And I'm sure many of you already know this. Adrian Pollard, you're saying, hey, my friend, I just can't get it out of my head when Moore's Law is Dead talked about the Xbox Series X teraflops and how they're being duped via the cloud running on the chip. That is very interesting that you bring that up, Adrian, because, yeah, Moore's Law is Dead did say that. I did bring it up on this podcast. I did talk about it in videos because he was simply trying to warn people, don't fall for Microsoft's marketing. There's a reason why PlayStation is coming out here with the PS5 saying, we're going to let the games do the talking. And they meant that in more ways than one, apparently. They didn't just mean that in the form of exclusive games. Turns out they actually meant that in the form of AAA multi-platform titles as well. And so, yeah, it's very interesting. Primal Plasma, you're saying, MBG, I bet you anything the lackluster Xbox Series X performance is because of the Windows operating system. It's a resource eater and not made for games. I think at this point, anything is possible, man. I think until Microsoft comes out themselves and just straight up tells us this is why you're seeing the results you're seeing, hopefully in an honest manner, right? But this is where they have put themselves in a very precarious situation because Sony didn't talk about power. In fact, if you go back, and I do encourage some of you, if you're interested in this enough, go back and listen to Mark Cerny's deep dive once again. And when you listen specifically to the sections where he's talking about the GPU and why they made the decisions they made, it's super interesting when you look at that and you look at the results we're seeing now. And it's like, Mark Cerny tried to warn everybody that you can't go by the teraflop. It's very dangerous to rely on that for your, general metric of performance and what you can expect from a game's console. He also talked about speed. He talked about why they clocked the PS5 so high. He talked about why they went with the lower compute unit count and how the thing about going with a higher compute unit count is it can become very difficult for developers to really kind of fill each one of those compute units with meaningful work and to really fully utilize them. And so, you know, um, Sony went with a more narrow but much faster approach, to whereas Microsoft went with a much wider but potentially slower approach. And when I talk about a slower approach, I feel like that's kind of what you're seeing right now. Dennis, you're saying the DualSense is reported to have lower latency. Yeah, that's something interesting as well that we should talk about for a moment here. Adrian, you're saying that's what's so crazy. Cerny tried to tell us all. Yeah, dude, listen, if you go back and you watch that Mark Cerny deep dive, you can, like, when I watched that for the first time live, I did not process literally a single thing. All right, maybe not a single thing, but 90% of what he discussed, I didn't and could not process while I was live streaming it. Not only because I was just not understanding, and he was going very quickly, obviously, even though it was a long presentation, he was going through that very quickly. I just, the only thing my mind was fixated on at that time, like, I think most other people's, which is not the thing my mind should have been fixated on, was the teraflop number. And so the big bomb drop during that discussion, unfortunately, was 10.3 T flops. And I was part of the problem. I was constantly peddling this idea that, oh, the PlayStation 5 could potentially be 13 T flops. And this was, me kind of being ignorant to the fact that, not even just ignorant, but literally falling for Microsoft's marketing, where it's like they're marketing with 12 T flops and I'm giving into it. I'm buying into this idea that the T flop matters. And until I started listening to other individuals kind of come out here, such as Moore's Law is Dead and others, basically say no, no. And even Mark Cerny himself said it. I probably just missed it the first time. They're letting you know that you can't. No, like, that is marketing speak, okay? Like, when you're talking about real world game performance in a dedicated game console, the teraflop is far from the be all end all, far from the only thing that matters, far from being the most important thing. And so I do admit that that was a lot of that was my fault, my ignorance, and just my um, foolishness for buying into Microsoft's marketing. When I bought the Xbox One X, I fell for it. I fell for the 6 teraflops, world's most powerful console. And then I ended up getting Crackdown 3 not too long after that, and thinking to myself, why did I buy into this? Why would I do that? This is kind of sad, right? And meanwhile, I'm looking at God of War and how incredible that looks on the less powerful console. So, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And that's what happened in that situation. And so we're so far removed from that. You talk about the DualSense, and you brought up the fact that it turns out the DualSense has lower latency. Now, this was a test that was done by, I believe, a YouTuber named Wolfden, where he was trying to compare the latency between the Series X controller and the PS5's DualSense. And he did let everybody know that it's not the most scientific way, but he did the best he could. And the results that he, came out with were, turns out the DualSense has better latency. Like it's just, there's less latency in the DualSense compared to the Series X controller. This is incredibly interesting and really just goes to show how you really have to be very careful about how you listen to Microsoft's marketing bullet points. I mean, don't get me wrong. When we're talking about marketing, you have to be careful in general because you have to understand that when it comes to these companies, this can be said for Sony as well, any of these companies in any market, their goal is to tell you what you want to hear. Their goal is to show you the best and kind of sweep the not so great stuff under the rug. And in some cases, even bend the truth a little bit, right? Now, I'm not saying that Microsoft is necessarily bending the truth. They're just kind of playing off of people's ignorance, which is understandable because it even worked on me. But when you think about their marketing for the Xbox Series X controller, one of their main marketing points for it was their ultra low latency. I don't know exactly what they called it, but they really went all in with this idea that the latency is, significantly improved on the Series X controller. And I'm not saying that it isn't or that no work actually went into that. I'm sure it did. And I'm sure that it is actually performing better. That would be an interesting test. Is it true that the Series X controller has less latency than the Xbox One? I sure hope it does. But to whereas Microsoft looked at that and they realized like we have to use that as a marketing tool. And this is where when you try to like zoom out and get a better broad picture, the bigger picture, and try to fully understand everything that's going on here, it is very fascinating because you start to realize that the reality of this situation is that Microsoft has had to rely on marketing pretty much anything they can for the Series X due to their lack of meaningful innovation. Now, I want you to really focus on what I just said there because, in my opinion, that is the ultimate differentiation, if I said that word correctly, between the PS5 and the Series X. And I think that that's going to be the differentiating factor in the future as well. I really do think this because you look at Microsoft clinging on to the teraflop. Now, why would they do that? Are they doing that because that's actually meaningful innovation and it's actually going to do some great things for games in the future? Or are they doing that because it's one of the only things they can market? I mean, I'll let you guys answer that. We already know the answer. It's because it's one of the only things they can market. So they cling on to the power. And the easiest way to represent that is with the teraflops, right? They're doing the same thing with the controller. They didn't do anything really, truly meaningful with their controller. So what do? Okay, how can we market this? Lower latency. Okay, ironically enough, the DualSense not only innovated in a bunch of different areas with their controller, but they also have the better latency. And Sony could have easily used that as a marketing point, but they decided that's not what's most relevant right now. What people want to know is the big differences. You see what I'm saying? This is where you see a fundamental difference in philosophy behind the approach that Microsoft and Sony have to the console gaming market. I've heard for years from, different people across the internet, Sony and PlayStation, they're all smoke and mirrors. And I don't think that's the case at all. In fact, I think it's actually the other way around. And for those wondering if I'm going to be talking about PlayStation, we are talking about PlayStation. We're talking about the competition, right? I don't think PlayStation is smoke and mirrors. I really don't. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they're completely innocent. I'm not saying that they don't want to show you the best that they can and kind of look at the way Sony approached, as we got closer to the release of the PS5. That's when you started hearing all of the not so ideal. I don't want to say bad news, but not so ideal. That's when they decided to release the very small list of games that don't run on backwards compatibility. They decided to finally let us know how much storage space we're going to get, stuff like that, letting us know that you can't actually store PS5 games onto an external drive. These little things, but the thing about it is they're smart for doing that because these are mostly, I'd say, smaller problems that can be fixed over time compared to the more important things like, is this console really innovative in any meaningful way? Yes, it is. Is the controller innovative in any meaningful way? Yes, it is. Do you actually have good games that are going to be coming out on this new console that are going to feel meaningful and give the console a purpose? Yes, we are releasing those games. See, these are the bigger questions that Microsoft pretty much can't answer any of those. And when they attempt to answer those, they're either excuses or they're just poor marketing points. Microsoft, did you innovate with your console in any truly meaningful way that could potentially change game development from a fundamental level? Well, no, not really. We're just kind of doubling down on, a PC development environment. Okay, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but I wouldn't necessarily call that truly innovative or game changing potentially. We're going to have to see about that. What about your controller? Did you innovate in any meaningful way? Well, we have a share button, but wait, didn't Sony already have that 7 years ago? Well, yeah. Well, then what else is there? Lower latency. And ironically enough, the DualSense has the lowest latency apparently. And so, well, what about the games? How are you going to have any meaningful games at launch? We wanted to have Halo. Well, where's Halo? Well, it turns out 343 is having a little bit of a difficult time. Okay, well, what are you going to do about it? Well, we're going to try to right the ship and hopefully it'll come together. Okay, outside of Halo, what do you have? Well, at launch, we don't really have anything. Okay, what about throughout 2021? Well, we're going to have to see how that lineup pans out. But we do have a lot of games coming in the future, and that's great. We bought Bethesda. Okay, that's cool, but we can't really let you know when exactly these games are coming out. You see what I'm saying? And we also can't, you're going to have to wait to see what the quality of a lot of these games end up being. To whereas everything that Sony is doing is relevant right now. And I have to emphasize that. Well, first, Fred Vance, you're saying Microsoft should have at least one or two first-party games lined up to give a reason to buy day one. PlayStation came out swinging hard day one. I agree 100%, man. That's one of my biggest complaints. You know what the crazy thing is? My biggest complaint with Microsoft isn't even the fact that they don't have any first-party games lined up for their launch, because it's clear that things are still in development. They're having a struggle. 343 is having a struggle. I can understand all that. What blew my mind, and I'm not going to talk much about this because I already went on and on about this, but what literally blew my mind was Phil Spencer's response, which is, well, it's actually okay we don't have a launch lineup because our console's selling anyway. And it's like, I don't care how true that may or may not be, which it's crazy that it's actually true. I'm sorry, man. That's a terrible, terrible response. And what that does is that tells me what your mentality is to the hardcore fan base, how you view the hardcore fan base. And that is straight up disrespectful, in my opinion. You're basically saying, well, they're going to eat it up no matter what. So we don't have to release games now. I said it before and I'll say it again. Sony could have done that exact same thing, but they didn't. They didn't rest on their laurels. They're not getting complacent. Sony is well aware that the PS5 is going to sell incredibly well, regardless of what they do coming out of the gate. So if they wanted, they could have pushed all these games back, but they didn't. And I'm grateful for that because you know what? That just goes to show that they're not taking advantage of the position they're in. They're not resting on their laurels. They're not saying we're the king of the hill, so we don't have to worry. No, they're saying we're the king of the hill right now, but we could very easily get knocked off if we take it easy. So I do appreciate that from Sony. I do not appreciate that comment from Phil Spencer about not needing a launch lineup. I'm not saying he should talk badly about their launch, but he should at least admit the truth, which is we meant to have Halo. We couldn't. That's a shame. But, we should do better. Everybody talks about how transparent and open Microsoft is. That's where they should be more open. Admit that you could do a lot better right now and that this is far from ideal. Doesn't mean the console's not going to sell, and that's fine, but come on. Adrian, once again, you're saying, damn, you're making me get the Holy Ghost. Yeah, so, kind of getting back to the center of this topic as I drink my rant juice. Should I make some rant juice merch or something? It's just coffee, but I always find it interesting that that's what we came up with here on the podcast, is we call it rant juice. And I notice people keep mentioning that. Jay, you're saying I'm going full fanboy this morning. Dude, there's nothing I'm saying here that's fanboyish. There's really not. Like, and I say that because nothing I'm saying here is necessarily untrue. You could argue that maybe you don't agree with some of my viewpoints or my opinions, but in general, I think a lot of what I'm saying is actually true. And, if I thought that it wasn't, I would let you know that I'm unsure, but I don't know. Am I wrong about anything I said? True Witty, you're saying Phil was disrespectful to gamers, but fanboys damage. Yeah, I assume, True Witty, you're trying to say that the fanboys continue to damage control. Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that because getting back to the comparisons, guys, look, you see the excuses running rampant. Okay. One of the excuses that I attempted to disprove yesterday because I frankly got tired of seeing it was that, oh, the reason why games are, lacking on the Series X right now. No, I don't even want to say lacking, but the reason why the Series X is not outperforming the PS5 as we were told it would, it's because the tool set that developers use for the Series X, it's not mature enough. They need more time. Now, there's two different distinctions here. Adrian, you're saying rant juice and ugly Christmas sweaters. Yeah, maybe. But look, there's two distinctions we have to make here. When you talk about the maturation of tools versus whether developers are comfortable yet using those tools, a developer, a Dirt 5 developer, pretty much confirmed that the tool set isn't immature. He even said that, there's a lot of tools, there's a lot on offer. It's very clear by this point that developers simply are having a difficult time optimizing for the Series X for one reason or another. And what we can rule out is that, you know, tools being immature or not mature enough or not robust enough, that's not one of the reasons. So we can rule that out. Morgan, you're saying rant juice mugs, please. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Christmas sweaters would be interesting, but I don't know. I feel like mugs just make the most sense, So maybe we could do a rant juice mug and feature it here on the channel at some point. If I do, I'll have it showcased at the top of the chat during one of these Press X podcast episodes. But I think that is a good idea. Thank you for that. Thank you for the super chats, guys. But yeah, I when you have to figure out what is the reason, is it because the Series X is a lesser console? Is because it's an inferior console? Well, on paper it's not, but in practice it is. And that's so crazy to think. I titled this video as the PS5 proves to be superior. Now, I know that there's a lot of Xbox fans who maybe get a little bit offended when they hear that. They get a little bit upset, but that's the reality right now. The PS5, outside of the paper spec sheets, is superior in pretty much every way. In the games department, in the innovations with the controller, in the speed, from the SSD and even the IO throughput, but now even in the multi-platform games. I mean, there were a lot of people that I've seen, and I know you guys have seen this. Okay, and I'm trying to be as calm, cool, and collected here as I can because I don't even think at this point I don't think a rant is needed. Because really what we have to do is look at this and frankly be happy. Those of us who supported PlayStation, those of us who were rooting for the PS5 because we had a really good hunch that it was going to be a great console, regardless of what anybody tried to tell us, regardless of all the naysayers and all the negative rumors, there's no reason to rant because this is good for us. I wasn't anticipating that games out of the gate we're going to be running better and looking, even if it's just slightly, but still, in some cases, it's not so slight, better on the PS5. When I was told this whole time that you better buckle up because games are going to look atrocious, right? I mean, with the way some of these guys were talking, you would think that you're basically getting a slightly enhanced version of a PS4 Pro game. To whereas, playing these games on the Series X, you're going to be getting full-blown next-gen, all the bells and whistles, better ray tracing, you name it. And you guys know that that's what's been said in these circles for some time. And it's like, it's how can we not celebrate this? We have to celebrate it. It doesn't mean we have to, let loose and freak out on Xbox fanboys. Like, no, but sometimes the truth does hurt, and sometimes the best thing to do is to just accept the truth and move on. Um, Stardust Dragon, you're saying I see a lot of YouTubers are starting to turn pathetic, like Yellow Flash. I don't know who that is. Used to love the guy. Now he just reports on BS on PlayStation left and right because he's still mad about The Last of Us Part 2. I'm not familiar with that YouTuber, but yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about The Last of Us Part 2 in our next topic when we talk about the Game Awards, because I do have a couple of things to say, so stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for the super chat. We also have another new member. Alpha A is what I will call you. Thank you so much for becoming a member, actually upgrading to the Play Has No Limits tier. Thank you for that, buddy. So look forward to your weekly special shout out, is what I'll call it, each week on the podcast. Thank you so much for that, buddy. Welcome to the channel. Look forward to your exclusive perks. And we also have iSiler18 saying, has Spidey froze on you? I'm on the PS4 version and it's really bad. Really, I haven't heard that, iSiler18. Anytime I played Spider-Man, it has not been frozen at all. Like, I have not had any moments where the game just freezes or stutters. Actually, though, I will tell you, my first experience with a hard crash of my console happened today, which was definitely concerning. I tried not to jump to any conclusions, though. I was just playing, I was actually playing some zombies in Call of Duty for a little bit, and I was playing solo, and it literally just, it just hard crashed, and it took like a little bit to boot back up, and I was like, uh-oh. It's been okay since, but that was a little bit concerning to me. And Junior Jackson, thank you so much, man. Upgrading to the Play Has No Limits Plus, going above and beyond. Thank you, man. Huge shout out to you. You've been a longtime supporter. Just want you to know that your support does not go unnoticed, man. Thank you so much for going all the way here. Really do appreciate that. You guys mean a lot to me. I couldn't do what I do here if it wasn't for you. You guys literally fuel this channel, and any extra support I get, it really does go a long way. I do want you to understand that. I don't want to sit here and try to, make everybody feel good, because I feel like that can be a little bit cringe sometimes. But the reality is, the people who do go above and beyond really do help out more than you probably realize. So thank you so much, man. You're saying you didn't know the tiers were available yet? Well, they are. So thank you, buddy. But yeah, I had my first hard crash with the PS5 today, and it was a little bit nerve-wracking. I was like, okay, is this going to happen again? And other than that, I've had a couple game crashes, and this is my first hard crash with the console. That's been it so far, so I'm hoping that that's going to be the extent. But obviously, if anything more happens, I will have to get back to you guys. Freeze Vamp, I see that you keep saying your message has been skipped. Unfortunately, man, when I'm doing my topics, I can't answer all of the questions I get. That's why I keep it, just with super chats. But, don't worry. We're going to have a Q&A at the end. So just save your question. I'll be sure to get to it at the end. Just to wrap up the first topic, because we do have a lot more to talk about, and I don't want to spend this entire podcast, I don't want to spend the entire podcast just going on about, the differences and the comparisons. And another new member, it seems like we have a little train going on here. Thank you guys so much. Brandon, upgrading to Play Has No Limits. Well, thank you so much for that, bud. You can look forward to your weekly exclusive shout out, I guess is the best way to word it. So thank you so much for that, man. Really do appreciate that. I see somebody saying, did you see Marlon's video on his dead PS5? No, I haven't been paying attention to much of that, because I know that there's going to be some PS5s that just straight up die. I mean, that is literally something that happens with every hardware launch. As far as I'm concerned right now, I haven't seen it look like it's some kind of major problem or something that, is basically the new red ring of death, except for the PS5. I've seen some people were unlucky, but I don't know. I feel like not many people have actually had consoles that just straight up died, right? And if there are, I mean, I would be interested to see what those numbers were. And Adrian Pollard also upgrading to Play Has No Limits. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, man. That really means a lot to me. I really love to see the support that you guys throw my way. It really, really makes me feel good, and it makes me feel like I really want to do my best to deliver the best content for you guys. So thank you so much. The direct support is so greatly appreciated. Um, but yeah, just to wrap up this topic, because I don't want it to be too long here, because we're going on the 50-minute mark. Here are the facts, okay? Well, let me read this real quick. The 1B, you're saying this is what happens when the core fan base takes its information from a businessman instead of an engineer actually working on the console. That is a good point you bring up there, the 1B. This is where, I understand that people like Phil Spencer, and, he has a job to do, and I don't fault him for that. His job is to sell Xboxes, to sell people on the Xbox brand any way he can, and I'm not saying that he's out here actively, purposely, maliciously lying. Like, I don't think there's malicious intent, but, when he talks to his marketing team and the marketing team comes back to him and says, these are pretty much the best marketing points we have right now, that's what they have to roll with, but you do bring up a good point. There is something to be said for Sony coming out here and being like, look, not only are we going to let the games do the talking, but when we do talk about the hardware, we're going to let the engineer come out here and for an hour, just tell you everything behind the console, right? Not saying it's going to be the most powerful, not saying it's going to, destroy the competition or give you the best multi-plat games. That's not what Sony focused on when they let Mark Cerny talk. If you listen to Mark Cerny, he's focused on talking about how this could potentially fundamentally not only change game development in the long run, from the ground up potentially, but how this is also going to just result in better games in the future for the people who care about playing games. And I love that. iSiler18, once again, you're saying, it says my membership ends December 11th. For some reason, it won't let me renew it. That is very strange, iSiler. Unfortunately, YouTube and Google, they limit my ability to be able to help out with that too much. Like, there's not really anything I can do in that regard. My best advice would be to try to contact Google and see if you can figure out what's going on with that, because again, like, they don't give me the power to be able to just like be like, oh, I'm going to go renew it for you. Like, I can't do anything like that. So that's my recommendation. If you don't want to lose your badge or anything like that and you want to keep it going, definitely try to reach out to YouTube. That might be your best bet, bud. So hopefully you can get that sorted out. I wish there was more I could do. But yeah, we're going to, you're saying, MBG, when you lie purposefully to your consumer base, it is malicious. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm just saying that I don't blame Microsoft for flexing the way they have. I say that because they're a multi-billion-dollar corporation, a near trillion-dollar corporation. To expect any different is just foolish. You know what I mean? Look, the people I honestly blame are the ones who, I don't even want to say fell for it. The people I blame are the ones who not only fell for it, but when the reality sets in and the truth comes out, they still hide behind denial and still basically become Xbox Defense Force 101. I get that. Sometimes when you're passionate about something and there's something that's not ideal or you get not so great news, sometimes your instinct is to just, I'm going to go on the defense a little bit here. I get that. But at the same time, we have to keep it real. We have to call a spade a spade. No one's saying you can't enjoy your Xbox. No one's saying that every time you boot up your Xbox Series X, you have to think, man, I really wish I would have got a PlayStation. I mean, to be real, I'm sure there are some people who genuinely feel that way after finding out that they're not getting the best version of multi-plat games. And that right there, those are the people who are legitimately, and look, I know the way I'm about to word this, I'm just using a metaphor. It's not that serious. So please don't don't think I'm making it seem like it's life or death here. It's absolutely not. It's video games. Okay. But for lack of a better term, these are the people who are caught in the crossfire, right? The people who are like, and you know what, to be fair, maybe it is a little bit more serious because you're talking about a lot of money here that, people are going out there for their families, kids who are maybe saving up, not kids, but like teenagers and stuff who are saving up money, desperately trying to get one of these new consoles. And one of the promises that was made to them is best multi-plat games. And to be completely honest, that's really the only major, emphasizing the word major flex, in my opinion, that the Series X could have potentially had on the PS5. And I could actually understand why a lot of people would be like, I want to get that console so I can have the best version of the multiplats, you know? But when it comes out that you're not getting that, I genuinely feel sorry for people who bought into that and were like, not only do you not get Spider-Man, you don't get Demon Souls, you don't get Astro's Playroom, you don't get Godfall, you don't get any of these exclusive games, not to mention any of the upcoming exclusive games. You don't get any of those. You don't get any of the innovations with the DualSense. You get maybe, an extra teraflop or two, but you don't even get the best version of multiplat games out of the gate. And your best bet is to cling on to hope that, well, maybe in the future. And that to me is just frankly kind of sickening. Like, this is really the position that these individuals are left in where, you've been waiting for so long. You've been waiting for Microsoft to produce a better console. You've been waiting for them to produce better games. You've been waiting for them to compete in this big way and waiting and waiting. I mean, just look back to what Phil Spencer said in 2019 after their E3 showing. I'm more excited about the games we didn't show. I'm more excited about the games we're going to show in 2020. And here we are at the end of 2020. A lot of games were shown, but we have absolutely no idea when any of those games are coming. And so to think that some of these individuals are actually turning around and telling people, you just wait. You just wait. That should be the slogan for Xbox, not jump in or whatever it is now. Or, what's the slogan for the Series X right now? Something about worlds. Somebody can let me know in the chat, but that's not what the slogan should be right now. The slogan should be, you just wait. Power your dreams. There you go. Thank you. It shouldn't be power your dreams. And you know what? To be fair, maybe that is a fair slogan because that's all you're going to be doing is dreaming, at least for some time. Again, if you're somebody who's committed to Xbox, you like Xbox, and you really don't care about anything I'm saying, more power to you. Literally, enjoy your games. I'm not saying if you're an Xbox owner, you shouldn't be enjoying your Series X. You shouldn't be enjoying Assassin's Creed or any other games you're playing. You shouldn't enjoy backwards compatibility. I'm not saying that. I'm saying for the people who bought into this, because I've seen it, guys. I'm telling you, a lot of people have come to me recently saying, I can't believe I bought into what Microsoft told me. All I expected was to get the better looking, even if it's slightly better looking, better running version of Assassin's Creed or whatnot. And I'm not getting that. Dude, yeah, like they want you to keep waiting. And this is why I will not accept and I will not tolerate what a lot of these Xbox fans or fanboys, these individuals who are still living in this delusion bubble or this defense cage, whatever you want to call it. Temper your dreams. Yeah, right. Power your denial. You guys are great. The stuff you come up with. Power your denial. Dude, that one's funny. That one's funny because, and it's funny because it's also kind of sad because that's what's happening. Look, my recommendation to Xbox fans is do not go into denial. Don't sit here and make any more excuses. Don't sit here and say, well, all right, I guess it's okay. It's the early days of the consoles, the developers, they need more times with the tools, So they're gonna, if I have to wait a year, but sure. But you know what they're gonna do? You know what they're gonna do though? What's gonna happen now is they're gonna say, well, while you're waiting, the wait will be worth it. You know why? Because, once they do fully utilize these tools, once they really harness it, then you're going to see it. You're going to see a massive difference. It's all hyperbole. Okay, that's all it is. You're not going to see a massive difference. If you're not seeing a massive difference now, the chances of seeing that massive difference later on is even less likely. The reason for this is obvious because their logic is, well, once developers get more time with the Series X, they'll be able to squeeze more out of it. The same exact logic applies to the PS5. Now, you could argue, well, maybe the ceiling and the level cap, I guess you could say, for the, you know, for the Series X is a little bit higher than, or even a lot higher than the PS5. You see, that right there is what's going to be so interesting to witness. How high is the ceiling for the Series X? Is it really as high as they want to make it seem? Is it really as mind-blowing? To be honest, if you want to evaluate both of these consoles, even from just looking at the spec sheet, I would argue that the ceiling for the PS5 is potentially even higher. Sure, maybe with less compute units, but I say that because we talked about this before. We talked about IO throughput. We talked about what Mark Cerny has focused on, and the Sony engineers. They focused on IO throughput, they focused on speed, they focused on data and how you can how can we transfer this data as fast as we possibly can, and how can this fundamentally change not only game development potentially from the ground up in some cases, but just change the way developers approach game development and game design, world design. These are things that people do not realize right now. Sony's marketing of that SSD, sure, you could say, well, the SSD isn't going to produce better graphics. That's not how that works. That's what the GPU is for. Okay, fine. What you do need to pay attention to is the whole reason Sony focused on a faster console. It's not literally just about load times. I mean, look, they're going to tell you it's about load times because that's the easiest thing for them to market. What they're really focused on is how do we change game development? How do we change the fundamental approach that many developers take to their world design, to their game design? How do we enable them to really start thinking outside of the box? They don't have to worry about bottlenecks or limitations. You could say maybe the same can be achieved with the Xbox Series X's 52 compute units, but I can tell you right now, at the end of the day, the Series X, ultimately, I'm just going to be honest, and maybe this is where I'm going to wrap it up. You could have told me before, there's no way the Series X is going to be held back because it's the world's most powerful console, 12 T-flops, games look best, run best, whatever, fine. But then we see what happens. Here's where we are now. At this point, I'm beginning to believe that it's actually going to be Xbox that holds the Series X back. Whether that's due to the Series S, whether that's due to the fact that their development kits and their development tools are just more difficult to work with because you're dealing with many different SKUs, whatever it may be. I'm not a developer. I don't know the exact reasons, but something's becoming clear here, guys. What's becoming clear is that Sony knew what they were doing. Mark Cerny and his engineering team knew what they were striving for, and they stayed focused on that singular goal. And they didn't let all of these little things such as, but how many T-flops does it have? But what about a less powerful console that we can sell for cheaper? They didn't let these things get in the way. They thought about the developers and what would be best for the developers, because as Mark Cerny said in his most recent Washington Post interview, I'm not going to quote him directly because I don't have it in front of me, what's good for developers will be great for gamers. And there you go. The people should listen to Mark Cerny more often, because this dude, I'm telling you, people act like, oh, he's overhyped. No, he's the real deal, man. He really is. Not only is he a genius, literally, but he's a game developer and designer, and clearly somebody who wants to play great games. That's somebody you need leading a gaming division. The 1B22000, once again, you're saying, I think the Series X will get better, but it will never have a significant advantage for a couple of reasons. This isn't a GCN versus cell processor situation. The GPU and CPU are way more similar this generation. PS5 is just more efficient. Exactly. I'm glad you said that. Thank you for the generous donation, by the way, in Super Chat. That's another really important thing. I know I've been going on and on with this topic, and trust me, we're going to move on because we do have other things we have to discuss, but that's another really good point you bring up there. We're not talking about two vastly different architectures here. They are very similar in some ways. They are very different in some ways. I think where they differentiate from one another is, what is each company banking on? Microsoft is banking on traditional game development kind of staying the way it is and not really anything outside of that. Like traditional game development is going to continue to see a ceiling, law of diminishing returns. To whereas I think Sony really thought maybe if we continue to develop games in the most traditional way possible, then yeah, maybe we've already reached the ceiling. But how can we develop them differently? How can we kind of change the philosophy and just change what maybe is possible. See, there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee that what Sony's betting on is going to work for sure. But let me just remind you, there is a reason why, Epic Games with Unreal Engine 5, one of the most, widely recognized and used engines in the world. There's a reason why when they saw what Sony was doing at the PS5, they went back and literally altered the code of Unreal Engine 5 to basically altered it to kind of work around the PS5 because they realized, wow, this could potentially be a game changer, literally, in the development landscape. So, Brittany, thank you so much. Brittany Goes Me Out, thank you so much for upgrading to the Play Has No Limits tier for the membership. That is awesome. You guys are showing incredible support. It means the world to me. Look forward to your exclusive weekly shout out. I can't make any promises right now to all of you guys who upgraded to the membership tier. I can't make any promises because, again, I have to be wary of spreading myself too thin. What I will say is that I will always be open to thinking about how I can improve and expand upon these membership tiers. So, if you're a member now, you're going to get what you get, but in the future, there may be things that are added. If I ever take on too much and I can't handle it, I'll just be honest with you guys and let you know so you can know to cancel your membership. But that is something to keep in mind as well. We have iSiler18. Once again, you're saying the Xbox community keeps saying the Series X will run games better later on now. It's always wait and see and never able the present. As it stands now, PS5 is better for running games. And thank you, iSiler18. That's where I want to end it because I think, you're helping me segue to just putting a bow on this. That is the fact of the matter. The cold, hard facts. Facts don't care about your feelings. The facts don't lie. However, facts are very susceptible to being altered by others who don't want to accept them. The fact of the matter now is this. You ready for this? You ready for this? Games look and play best on PS5. That's the fact of the matter right now. Will that continue? Who knows? Your guess is as good as mine. All I know is that right now, the PS5 has not only met my expectation, it has actually surpassed it. The PS5 is punching above its weight. And as I said earlier, this is something PlayStation fans should be happy about. And frankly, I don't see many other Xbox individuals. I don't see many of them, acknowledging this in the way they should. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's their prerogative. They can acknowledge it. They cannot acknowledge it at all. They don't have to talk about anything. But I think it would be best for them, and I would encourage them, come out, let everybody know that this is unacceptable. You're talking about people with large followings and large fan bases, and if you really do care about the console experience, if this is something that you actually genuinely care about, and it's not just something you're pursuing for monetary gain or, just to create some type of illusion, if it's something you actually care about, and believe me, I've been gaming on the console since I was 4 or 5 years old. It's something I actually care about and means something to me. You're going to want to let Microsoft know that the way they've been going about things, this isn't cool. This is unacceptable. And that's all it is. That's the best advice I can give them. I'm not going to sit here anymore and be like, ha ha, and rub it in their faces. Cause you know what? If I was them, I'd be feeling pretty annoyed right now. I'd be feeling pretty mad. And, I just feel like PlayStation fans, those who are excited for the PS5, we're getting more than we expected. Sony, they over-delivered. Either that or Microsoft severely under-delivered. But in my opinion, Sony over-delivered, and I'm very happy for that. So with that being said, we are going to move on to the next topic because we spent a lot of time talking about that one, but I thought it was a really good one. And this next topic is going to be just as interesting, in my opinion. Let me take a sip of the good old rant juice here. If you guys can't speak. If you guys could do me a big favor, hit that like button. We're almost at 500 likes, which is awesome. We have over 1,300 people here watching. Thank you guys for being here with me. Hit that like button. Let's see if we can get it to 500, potentially even 600 likes. That would really help the podcast out a lot. Alrighty, we are going to move on to the next topic. And that topic is also a very exciting one, a very positive one for Sony and PlayStation fans. And you're saying Astro's Playroom is epic. It really is. Dude, I agree 100%. Yeah, really quick here before we dive into this. If you have a PS5, do yourself a favor. Go play Astro's Playroom. That is a special game. I legitimately got a little bit emotional playing it. And I rarely get emotional, let me tell you. But I think it was just the way it's presented. And it kind of made me realize that, I have I'm rooted in PlayStation, believe it or not, when it comes to my gaming experience. I know a lot of people might be surprised to hear that because they're like, wait, didn't you go from being an Xbox fan to now you're a PlayStation fan? The truth is, I actually converted to Xbox during the 360 era, but my earlier days in gaming were actually rooted in PlayStation with the PS1, the PS2. The 360 was just incredibly appealing to me. And at that time, I guess I would call myself more of a more casual like gamer. Although, can you call yourself a casual gamer if you played Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3 on the PS2 and looked at them as some of your favorite games? And for those wondering, I did get a PS3 specifically for Metal Gear Solid 4. I even have a poster right next to me of Old Snake, one of my favorite games. I don't know why. Sony did something to make the PS3 seem extremely unappealing to me, but Kojima won me over, with Metal Gear. And I bought it. I somehow was able to get my hands on a PS3 to play that game. But other than that, I just really spent all of my time on the 360. And I thought the Xbox One was essentially going to be another 360 era. And, it had some good games, but I reluctantly, went back. I say reluctantly because I didn't think it was going to go down that way, but I went back to PlayStation and it was worth it. So anyway, I digress here. Let's move on to the second topic. Sony completely dominates the Game Awards this year, with 3 of the 6 games being nominated for Game of the Year being PlayStation 4 exclusives, 2 of which are actually from Sony's first-party studio. Just let that sink in. Half of the games that are nominated this year for Game of the Year are PS4 exclusives. And I know that Final Fantasy VII Remake is going to be coming to Xbox sometime next year, but let's be real right now. It's a PS4 exclusive. Anybody who cared about that game, who wanted to play it, already bought it on PlayStation 4 and played it. Okay? Unless, I'm sure there are maybe some people who waited, but that's neither here nor there. Again, the fact of the matter is, as of right now, as of the time of this recording, even if Final Fantasy VII Remake were to win Game of the Year, you can only play it on PS4. So, is it releasing for PC as well? That's what I'm not sure about. Maybe you guys can let me know. As far as I know, it's not out on PC yet. Maybe it's going to release on PC the same time as Xbox. But yeah, so The Last of Us 2 actually has the most nominations of any game, and Ghost of Tsushima is also right up there. I think The Last of Us Part 2 has a total of 10 nominations. I'm pretty sure. I thought I wrote that down. But I know that Ghost of Tsushima has 7 nominations. So they're both in the running for Game of the Year. So the Game of the Year list, let me bring it up here really quick. I thought I had it written down. I must have accidentally skipped out on that. Give me 1 second. And while I bring up this list, we have Eric from 850. You're saying I had PS1, PS2, 360, then PS4, and eventually get the PS5. I think we perceive the same eras of gaming. I don't know if that's just us, though. Yeah, look, there's no doubt that the PS3 was like a weak point for Sony, but they really came back in the end. But yeah, we share a lot of similarities in that way. iSiler18, once again, you're saying, here's hoping The Last of Us 2 wins Game of the Year. The PS5 lets you view the hours of every game you played, and The Last of Us is over 300 hours for me. No joke. That's crazy, dude. That's a lot of hours spent on that game for sure. I'd have to go. I don't know. I haven't, to be honest, I haven't went back and played The Last of Us since I beat it one time. And we'll talk about that in a minute. I think a lot of you are aware that me and The Last of Us 2 have a very uh, strenuous, tension-filled relationship, I guess we could say. Let me just find. Yeah, okay. So here are the games that are up for Game of the Year: The Last of Us Part 2, Hades, which I've heard really good things about, Ghost of Tsushima, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Doom Eternal, and Animal Crossing New Horizons. It's funny because I've seen a lot of people kind of freaking out a little bit at Animal Crossing New Horizons. A lot of people saying, now I haven't played it, I'm not familiar with it, I just know that it's sold like crazy. A lot of people saying that that game should not be in the running for Game of the Year. I can't speak to that, so it is what it is. I'll just say I would be surprised if it won because, it's a lot of people are saying it shouldn't be there. So I don't know. And yes, I see you guys pointing out the fact that Microsoft has no games once again. And, hey, there's a reason why there's a reason why Sony has 3 games here and Microsoft has none. So hopefully next generation, that right there speaks to the competitive aspect that we've all been waiting for, which is Microsoft, when are you going to compete on the same level as Sony with these games? We're waiting. Hopefully we won't have to wait much longer. I would love to see some Microsoft games in the running for Game of the Year. Maybe it could be Hellblade 2, and I know that, they bought them, so it's not like they cultivated that talent, but still, Hellblade 2 will probably be a great game. Maybe it'll be this game that the Initiative is working on. We still have to wait, but all right. So what else do I have written down here? So yeah, just speaking to the Game of the Year, nominees here, my vote personally goes for, it goes to Ghost of Tsushima. And I wrote down why on my Twitter. So I'll just read it to you guys. I said, Ghost of Tsushima gets my vote. It's a new IP, a massive and beautiful open world, interesting character development, solid writing, addictive combat, engaging story, fleshed out side quests, a satisfying ending, stunning graphics, free multiplayer expansion. Yeah, that's a lot of reasons to love Ghost of Tsushima, in my opinion. And, let's just be real right now, guys. All right, let's talk about The Last of Us Part 2 in regards to the Game Awards. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's no point in me even really talking much about who's going to win Game of the Year. It's clear that one of these Sony games is going to win. That's no offense to the other games. But let's cut through it a little bit more. The Last of Us 2 is going to win. I mean, does anybody here actually believe it's not going to win Game of the Year? And I say that as somebody who didn't really like The Last of Us 2. I mean, it's really difficult to talk about The Last of Us Part 2 because the conversations get really bad really quick. I had my word. I had my thoughts on The Last of Us Part 2. They're in video format. They're still on my channel. You can go watch them. I'm not going to bother diving into that. What I realized about The Last of Us 2 is it is possibly the most divisive game ever created. It really is, because you either love it or you hate it. And how it's so difficult to be in the middle with a game like The Last of Us 2. I say that because that's what I'm trying to do, right? Like, I don't really feel the need to talk about it anymore in terms of let me give my opinion on The Last of Us 2. Because again, I've already done that. And anybody who's been following me for a little while, you should already know what my opinion is. I'm not here to rehash that. And so when I look at the conversations that are happening for Game of the Year, it just, I'm happy for Sony. Okay. Like, I'm happy for Sony because, like, if there's one thing I can give the Last of Us 2, I've always been able to give The Last of Us 2 is putting the story that was told aside and the way it went down aside, there's no doubt that that game is the epitome of something being crafted to like another level of detail, right? The acting, I think Ashley Johnson and Laura Bailey, they're up for like best performance, and it's like it has to go to one of them. I mean, for me personally, I would give it to Ashley Johnson with Ellie. She did an incredible job, and like that's the thing. That's the thing here is like there's so many things that have been done so well with The Last of Us 2. That doesn't mean I love it. That doesn't mean I even liked the game itself and the story that was told, but I do have to give credit where credit is due. And I've always given The Last of Us this credit. I've always given Naughty Dog this credit where, I feel like that game could win Game of the Year like just for the level of detail and polish that it had alone. You know what I mean? And Munor, if I'm saying your name correctly, apologies if I butchered it. You're saying The Last of Us 2 is a fun game, but a little too woke for my taste. Ghost of Tsushima should win Game of the Year because it's a great game. That's actually not speaking to the woke aspect of it, because again, I'm not getting into that here. What I do want to speak to, though, and this was the important part, this is actually why I brought up The Last of Us 2. My number one reason for why Ghost of Tsushima should win Game of the Year, at least it gets my vote, is actually it comes down to gameplay. It really does. Siler18, you're saying Laura Bailey is a vet, been around since the 90s. Yeah, Laura Bailey's been around for a long time. Great voice actress. She did I think she did a good, even though I have my thoughts on on the character she plays and on Abby. I have my thoughts on Abby. I still think she delivered a great performance. She's an actress and she did a great job. I think anybody nominated did a great job, obviously, but I really do think that that The Last of Us, when in terms of like performance and just how good, like just how next level the performances are. I mean, come on, that's one area where The Last of Us is just it's very good at what it does. Whether or not you agree with everything that's going on in the story, well, that's a different conversation. But let me tell you this. My number one reason for giving my vote to Ghost of Tsushima literally comes down to the reason why we play video games, and that is for the gameplay. When I think about my time playing The Last of Us 2, physically playing the game, right, versus playing Ghost of Tsushima, they're vastly different. And I have to admit that the story of The Last of Us Part 2, I think definitely affected my gameplay experience, because when you think about The Last of Us Part 2, minor spoilers, I guess. It's really not a spoiler at this point. Everybody is aware you play as Abby in the game. I didn't mind playing as Abby in the game. My problem started when I realized I'm playing an overwhelming majority, or at least more than half of this game as Abby. And it felt way like The Last of Us 2's gameplay is very good. However, I really feel that it's tough to play continuously, like for an extended period of time, before I start to get like, okay, this is like way too repetitive. You know what I mean? Where I go into one area and I'm taking the same exact approach. I have basically one of two ways I can play it. And the combat does feel satisfying up to a point. To whereas when I was playing, and that was the problem I had with The Last of Us Part 2. I'm going to get to these super chats in just a second, guys. That was the problem I had with the Last of Us Part 2, is that I just found that regardless of how I felt about the story, I was really starting to kind of like feel like I'm trying to get through this game, because like by like the 15, 16, 17 hour mark, I'm like, okay, like I'm ready for, this to kind of end. And when I saw just how long, like I was playing through, like just how long it was just going through section after section after section with kind of just doing the same things in terms of gameplay, I really started to get tired of it. I really did. To whereas when I was playing Ghost of Tsushima, it didn't really feel like that. Josh Z, you're saying all I care about is Final Fantasy VII Remake getting recognized for music. That modernized soundtrack is awesome. Yeah, it will be interesting to see what Final Fantasy VII ends up winning. Who knows? Maybe it'll take Game of the Year and shock everybody. Brandon, you're saying everything about The Last of Us 2 is fantastic, except what mattered most in terms of The Last of Us, the story and character development. Yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe that's why I feel so down on it. The gameplay, particularly, anyway, because when I think back to The Last of Us 1, I'm like, I don't remember feeling this like down on The Last of Us 1's gameplay, but it was a much shorter game, and I was enjoying the story a lot more. So maybe that's why. Connor, you're saying The Last of Us 1 is about love. The Last of Us 2 is about revenge and hate. Mark my words, The Last of Us 3 will be about sacrifice and redemption. I don't know if there's going to be a Last of Us 3. There probably will be, considering how successful it was, but oh my God, I am not looking forward to The Last of Us 3 being announced, because the conversation, like, it's hard to even talk about it now because it's just, the conversations become so toxic so quickly. You can't even have like I mean, we're having a rational conversation right now, but you guys see it. Come on, you guys see it on the internet. We also have Oyakarumi. You're saying the reason why Xbox is not performing better is because of the tools. Because of the tools, blame it on the tools. The tools are malfunctional and faulty. Step your game up, Doombox. Sorry, I mean Xbox. What up, dude? Well, what's going on, Oyakarumi? Thank you so much for the super chat. Yeah, if you're just tuning in now, you may have missed the long conversation we had about Xbox. And unfortunately for you, I'm not going to dive into that anymore because we spent over an hour discussing it. But I do encourage you, come back and listen to the first hour because we had a lot to say. But thank you for the super chat, bud. The last, when I played Ghost of Tsushima, the gameplay was just more satisfying. Don't get me wrong, Ghost of Tsushima got repetitive as well. And that's the thing here. I can never fault a game for being repetitive, because think about what video games are. It's literally rinse and repeat. That's all games are. Games are meant to be repetitive. However, I think the mark of a truly exceptional gameplay loop compared to a maybe not so exceptional gameplay loop is how repetitive it begins to feel to you. Because it's like you could do the same thing over and over again without it actually feeling repetitive. To whereas there's games you can play where it's like it really starts to weigh on you, like, okay, I'm getting really tired of this. With Ghost of Tsushima, there were times where it did get repetitive and frustrating. And I will admit that from just a technical standpoint, The Last of Us 2 is above Ghost of Tsushima. I don't think there's any question about that. And Ghost of Tsushima is fantastic on a technical level, but there's no doubt that you can tell, like, people at Naughty Dog were like taking things to another level, in some ways. But when I was playing the Ghost of Tsushima, the core gameplay, the progression loop, the feeling of parrying and just instantly taking somebody out, using the different tools at my disposal when needed, versus in The Last of Us 2, I frequently felt like I was trying to stealth my way through areas, and I got frustrated with it because, to be honest, I just wanted to progress the story because I'm just tired of constantly strangling enemies, and stabbing them in the neck. I just want to get to the next area and see what's going to happen. So I would end up resorting to, the kinetic and frantic combat. And again, The Last of Us 2 does this incredibly well, where the combat is intense, it's brutal. I mean, insanely brutal. But, that doesn't, like, whether combat is brutal or not doesn't necessarily make it any better. It certainly enhances the shock factor. But I found myself, after probably the first 10 to 15 hours, like, after it hit that point, I was like, okay, I'm kind of done. You know what I mean? I'm kind of done with, like, this. And I literally just started mowing through people. And I would actually get really frustrated because I was playing it, I think, on normal difficulty, and I was just so eager to get to the next story area that I just started rushing through and just making careless mistakes and constantly dying, and it just led to frustration. And I just started to think, like, there were multiple times when I was playing The Last of Us 2, I was like, I have to take a break. Like, I can't, I don't want to go through another section of enemies. I want to take a break. When I was playing Ghost of Tsushima, anytime I got to that point where it was like, okay, I've been doing this for a while, there was other things for me to do. You know what I mean? And again, like that speaks to the gameplay loop where it's like, not only are they giving me other things to do, like in the world itself, and I know we're comparing an open world game to a linear game, but the gameplay loop, the combat loop was just more satisfying in Ghost of Tsushima. That's why I went and I played the multiplayer. Would I play The Last of Us multiplayer? Of course. Of course I would. But there's just a difference, in my opinion, between, I'm going to take on four other human enemies with The Last of Us type combat and scavenging system versus I'm trying to progress through the story. The story's really upsetting me. Like I'm not really. I'm just trying to kill these dudes and move on. You know what I mean? But people love combat in The Last of Us 2. People think that The Last of Us 2 gameplay is truly like next level stuff, and it's all subjective here. And whoever wins Game of the Year, it's truly subjective. But guys, come on, The Last of Us 2 is going to win Game of the Year. Stardust Dragon, excuse me, I need to sip my rant juice here. You're saying the people in the comment section saying The Last of Us 2 is amazing. How come we haven't gotten updates on the units sold? Yeah, that is kind of strange, right? Like, I do find that strange that we haven't gotten an update on that. I do wonder if maybe sales dropped off dramatically because we've gotten more updates on Ghost of Tsushima sales than we have The Last of Us. So I don't know what's up with that. iSiler18, you're saying, in my opinion, Ghost got repetitive way faster. Even standoff fights has the exact same animation you can use. Water stance and spam triangle and always win. Yeah, that's true. There's definitely some things you can cheese, and I will admit that the standoffs got very old very quickly. I love them, but you're right. They got way too repetitive way too quickly. But I don't know. Maybe it's just the sword fighting. I don't know. The Last of Us 2 did a good job in making me, maybe you could say The Last of Us 2 did exactly what it set out to do ultimately, which was make me feel hatred, make me feel bad and not good, while simultaneously, when I'm in combat, making me feel kind of like I am underpowered, or at the very least, like I am certainly vulnerable. And when I go to shoot guns, I'm not going to have pinpoint accuracy. I'm not, excuse me. I don't know why that keeps happening. I'm not, I'm not like an elite soldier. I'm just trying to survive. So in that way, you could argue that maybe that like it does what it's supposed to do. My real problem with The Last of Us's gameplay, believe it or not, doesn't even lie in the gameplay itself. As weird as that sounds, it's not that, oh, the game doesn't feel good to play. The problem is how exaggerated the story is in terms of length. Like, it was shockingly long. And at first I was like, that's great, 25 to 30 hours. But then what I didn't realize is 25 to 30 hours of The Last of Us gameplay. There's a reason why The Last of Us 1 was like 12 to 15 hours tops. And that's if you're just like taking your good old time. There's a reason why that story was much shorter. Most critics, and again, it's all subjective, but most critics would agree that The Last of Us 1's gameplay is not what makes that game. That's not why it won all the awards it won and achieved everything it achieved. The Last of Us gameplay was good and even great in some ways. It wasn't mind-blowing. It wasn't like something that revolutionized gameplay. That's just the truth. And the same exact thing can be said for The Last of Us 2. And so I think for me, it's just like the ratio was off. You know what I mean? I think it was the YouTuber, I always hate saying his name because it's so strange to say, but Nakey Jakey. Have any of you watched his Last of Us 2 critique video? Incredible video, so well thought out, so well done. I really appreciate it. But he kind of talked about this, how there's just a ratio, and the ratio was just not there for The Last of Us Part 2. How it's just like there's can there be such a thing as too much gameplay? Well, that depends. What is the gameplay loop like? Does this gameplay loop lend itself to playing this game for like having 20 to 25 raw hours of gameplay? I hate to say it, but in my opinion, for The Last of Us 2, that answer is no. And there are some areas in Ghost of Tsushima where the same applies, where it's like, yeah, it can be rough. It can be rough with some of the gameplay loops. Like, they don't lend themselves perfectly. But in general, guys, like, I just loved everything that Ghost of Tsushima did. And I hate to have to bring this up, okay? But hey, it's my opinion. I'm just going to give it to you straight. One of the things I did list for Ghost of Tsushima was, you know, a satisfying ending. And you could choose your ending, but the ending I chose anyway, which I don't want to spoil it for anybody. I'm not spoiling any endings here. You don't have to worry about details, but I'm just going to say that I felt so different after completing Ghost of Tsushima than I did playing The Last of Us Part 2. Guys, maybe, you can call me a baby, you can call me a child, you can call me whatever you want, when I say this, but I was genuinely, and I have to stress this, if you go watch my content on The Last of Us Part 2, you'll know I'm not kidding when I say this. I was genuinely depressed after playing The Last of Us Part 2. I felt so bad that and frankly disgusted that I was just like, I cannot say that I enjoyed that. And if that, like, let me put it to you this way. If that was the feeling that Neil Druckmann and his team were trying to evoke and leave me with, then they succeeded with flying colors here. Like, they succeeded. To where when I completed Ghost of Tsushima, I felt satisfied. I felt good. I felt something. Like, it wasn't like, oh, that was great. Like, happy ending, happy days. Like, no, I'm not saying that. There were some deep things that were, that happened in Ghost of Tsushima, and I felt something. I was like, wow, like that was intense, man. But I felt satisfied. I felt like, okay, that was good. That was really good. I enjoyed that, and look, this is the last thing I'm going to say, because I don't want to keep beating a dead horse here when it comes to Ghost of Tsushima and Last of Us 2, because in my opinion, those are the two games, like, and I haven't played Final Fantasy VII Remake. I know there are a lot of people who told me to play Final Fantasy VII Remake. They say it's like one of the best games of the year. I'm sure it is. I'm just not a Final Fantasy fan, honestly. Icyler18, you're saying, I'm hoping Abby wins Best Character so I can witness the ultimate civil war the internet has ever seen. I'm telling you right now, I'm going to hopefully stream the Game Awards. I'm barely going to be talking about what goes down. Like, if The Last of Us wins, I'm not talking about it. If Laura Bailey wins, I'm not talking. If Ashley Johnson wins, I'm not talking about it, because, like, I don't want to be involved in that toxicity anymore. People have their opinions. I have mine. Maybe I'll talk about it on the podcast. It's just easier to talk more candidly here. But I'm not going to make a video saying why The Last of Us 2 shouldn't have won Game of the Year, or why The Last of Us 2 should have won Game of the Year. You know what? I take that back. I don't want to say that what I'm going to do now, because my thoughts may change. I'm just saying I'm just not getting involved in it. You know what I mean? Like, there's people who they want to continue to fight, and they want to continue to scream and shout, and I'm just like, I'm good. I'm going to go enjoy some games. I'm over it. You know what I mean? I'm only talking about it now because, these are games that are up for Game of the Year that I did play. Durin, you're saying you were depressed based off the leaks, bro. Stop. Yeah, no, the leaks definitely depressed me. However, looking back in retrospect, I'm thankful for them, because I'll tell you right now, my mind would have been completely broken if I had no idea what I was walking into, and I witnessed that the way it happened. I would have literally been in utter shock, which you could argue maybe that's great, because that's like, when does that happen, right? But not in a good way, man. I would have been like so mind blown. So the leaks kind of helped me, man. They made it easier for me to swallow that pill in a way. But it's not that there are definitely some good undertones and good deep moments in The Last of Us Part 2, but I just I was, I didn't realize how much the story of these characters really meant to me until I saw the direction that they went in. And again, you look, this is where I'm going to end it before moving on here. At the very least, okay, like regardless of my opinion of The Last of Us Part 2, I want it to be known that I respect art. More importantly, I respect an artist's vision. I am not one of these people that feels as though I should be over here telling anybody who's creating their own art what it should be and what it shouldn't be. Now, you could argue, well, you played The Last of Us 1 and you grew an attachment to these characters, so to an extent, maybe somebody like Neil Druckmann should consider you and how you're going to feel and how fans are going to feel. But at the same time, I do understand that. But at the same time, I am much more on the side of art is art, man. And it doesn't have to make you feel good. It doesn't have to make you feel bad. It doesn't have to make you feel anything. An artist's vision should be just that. And, I don't like the idea of an artist basically feeling like, oh, well, I have to do this way because they said so or because this is what they expect. To me, that kind of sucks, not all the time. I mean, that has its place. Like if you do something great and you want to continue to please fans and do fan service, um, you know, just you, you have to accept that there's just going to be artists out there where they want to do what they want to do. And you don't have to accept it, you don't have to like it, but I just don't like this idea that like people have to be pushed into doing like, you know what I mean? Like here's the thing. If you don't like this artist's vision, then just walk away and find another one. That's what I did. Like I was mortified with what I saw with the Last of Us Part 2. Like I was in literal disbelief and depression. But I got over it. I walked away and I said, well, it is what it is. Can't win them all. And I went and I played Ghost of Tsushima. I'm like, I like this a lot better. I like their vision a lot better. It lines up with, how I expect to feel when playing video games a lot better. So that's all it is, man. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't critique the art. No, do not misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm not saying that if you don't agree with an artist's vision, that doesn't mean, that means it doesn't deserve critique or you can't critique it. No. Critique away, man. Like if you hate something in a respectful way, let somebody know why you hate it, why you can't stand it. But you can't, this kind of goes down. I think a lot of you understand what I'm trying to say. Oyakurumi, you're saying, is Hades like Bastion or no? I haven't played it. To be honest, I don't know either. I haven't played Hades. For those who have, maybe you can let us know in the chat. Let me see. Anmunar, I don't think I read this one already. I'm just a little bit confused with the super chats here. I think they're mixed up, but saying some people want The Last of Us 2 to win and others Ghost of Tsushima. But at the end of the day, they're both Sony's exclusives. Where are the Xbone exclusives? We should celebrate as PlayStation fans. Exactly. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to spend time talking about this topic, because as I said, regardless of your opinion on each of these games, the fact that Sony has 3 out of the 6 games here in the running for Game of the Year, that can only happen when something is truly quality, right? The quality of the story, that's subjective. That's for you to decide. Can you really argue that as a video game and when it comes to animation work and graphical fidelity and acting, you're going to tell me that The Last of Us 2 isn't quality, or that Ghost of Tsushima isn't quality, or that Final Fantasy VII Remake isn't quality? Stardust Dragon, you're saying my problem with The Last of Us is Neil Druckmann costs 70% of the senior staff to leave for his pathetic vision. Well, yeah, I mean, look, when it comes to the internal strife that there may have been, it is what it is. If Sony is okay with that. I mean, I think Jim Ryan recently gave his opinion on the controversy surrounding The Last of Us 2. And he basically just said that he's proud of what they did and they don't, it's not that they don't hear certain criticism. It's just, he was basically saying that like they listen to the critiques and the criticisms. They just don't listen to stuff like death threats and people basically like screaming at them, which I totally understand. But let's be honest, the game made them a lot of money. I'm sure all Jim Ryan really cares about. And I don't want to. Jim Ryan seems like a nice guy, and I don't know his character or anything. I'm just going to assume that because it's his job to help PlayStation thrive and profit, the game sold incredibly well and is in the running for the most amount of Game of the Year awards. I'm going to assume that he's not sitting back feeling bad about The Last of Us Part 2. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think he's going to be like, yeah, we really made a terrible game, guys. Like, I don't think he's going to do that. Brandon, you're saying anyone who had even the slightest bit of valid criticism over The Last of Us 2 got attacked to no end. Both extreme sides of the argument are terrible. 110% agree, Brandon. That right there is the problem. There is no rational middle ground. And I will admit, I contributed to that to an extent with my initial reaction and shock. But I'm only human. And, once I settled down, I tried my best to thoroughly explain why I don't like this. And that is a problem. Like, anybody, whether you love or hate The Last of Us 2, you got, like, I know nobody's going to listen to me. Maybe you guys will, but you have to just chill out and learn to communicate respectfully. It's not that hard. You don't have to belittle people. You don't have to assume that anybody who has a criticism about The Last of Us 2 is some type of, terrible person. And we don't have to assume that anybody who loves The Last of Us Part 2 is a terrible person. People can have their own opinions and feelings on different games and different stories. That's just the way it is. There's nothing wrong with that. You can have a passionate, emotional opinion, but you can still keep it respectful. That's the key that I think a lot of people miss. Oe Akarumi, you're saying Akuna Matata, bro. Yeah. Give me 1 second here. We're going to be transferring over to the next topic. Guys, I do want to encourage all of my mods really quickly. Try to ease up just a little bit on, let people have their freedom to say what they want. I only want you to put people on timeout or ban people if they're just straight up being nasty or, really inappropriate or something like that. If people have their opinions, let them have their opinions. You know what I mean? If it's not something directly nasty, just try to let people express themselves. I just want to encourage the chat to, it doesn't have to be filled with just people saying what we all want to hear. Okay. Like, I just want to say that because, define nasty. Well, come on. I mean, something that's just blatantly like you're being egregious for no reason. You're being disrespectful. You're being whatever. Like, again, you can have your opinion, just, try to keep it respectful. That's all. So, yeah. One last thing I do want to say here as well. Hold on 1 sec. Before finishing this topic, talking about the Game Awards, I do want to let you guys know, look, and I don't want to get anybody's hopes too high, so just keep in mind that I'm not confirming anything. I'm just saying that I have a good feeling, and that doesn't mean you should walk away from this assuming that it's going to happen. Am I streaming the Game Awards? I hope to. Yeah, I hope to stream the Game Awards. That should be, that should be good for me to do. But I want to let everybody know it seems extremely likely that Sony is going to be showing up at the Game Awards, not only collecting a bunch of awards, but to make an announcement, maybe more than one announcement or reveal. Sony certainly has one more announcement they are saving, and I talked about this a little bit before. I don't know exactly what it's going to be. If I had to take my best guess, we are going to see Silent Hill announced at the Game Awards. I think it's going to be Sony's big surprise that they've been saving. And you know why I say this? There's a pretty good chance that Microsoft has one more big reveal as well. And whether or not Sony is aware of what this big reveal or announcement is irrelevant. What Sony, I think, has in their mind, or their collective mind, I guess you could say, is they are just going to anticipate. They're going to assume that Microsoft has something big to announce at the Game Awards. So they want to make sure that they show up as well. because we have to understand that once we are done with the Game Awards, that's pretty much it for the year until next year. And so whatever momentum Sony has going out of December into January, it's going to be a big deal for their console. And so they want to keep that momentum going. So, there's a couple things that are apparently in the works. There are a couple things that we could expect to see at the Game Awards. We have God of War Ragnarok, possibly the first gameplay reveal, which would be massive. That would, I think, blow people away, and that would be huge, absolutely huge. So I think that that's very likely as well. If not Silent Hill, we could see the first God of War Ragnarok reveal, proper reveal anyway. If not that, as I said, I think Silent Hill is just as likely. If not Silent Hill, maybe, and we're going to talk more about this at the end, maybe, just maybe, Metal Gear Solid to some extent. If not that, maybe The Last of Us 2 multiplayer. That's something else. And actually, if you think about it, the Game Awards would be a perfect place for that, considering how many awards it's up for, or it's nominated for. But I think that these are all things that are pretty likely. So, that's something else we should talk about here is apparently Phil Spencer has played and seen a lot of Elden Ring. I thought it was really strange that he said that. I say that because when does he ever talk about playing third-party games that are currently in development? The only time I ever recall Phil Spencer talking about him playing and trying out games ahead of time are for games that are exclusive to the Xbox ecosystem. This has led a lot of people to think that, there's a chance a big announcement from Microsoft is that Elden Ring is going to be exclusive, or even worse, Microsoft acquired From Software. I don't think that's likely, but I don't know, man. We do have to understand that Elden Ring already does have the marketing, or Microsoft already has the marketing rights to Elden Ring. So I don't want to say that it's completely out of the realm of possibility here. I hope not. I would be devastated if that was true, because I want to play that on PS5. So we'll see about that. But it seems very likely we're going to finally see Elden Ring, the very elusive game that many people question whether or not it actually is real. So, iSiler18, you're saying, I'm glad Cyberpunk won't be there. It would have won everything out of pure hype, in your opinion. Now it has to answer to Kratos next year. Yeah, I talked about that as well. I said, look, I think the next God of War has a very, very good chance of being in the running for Game of the Year, just because we know the quality level it's going to be at. And a lot of people are like, no, dude, you're crazy. Cyberpunk has Game of the Year 2021 in the bag. And I'm like, I wouldn't jump to those conclusions just yet. If you recall, God of War 2018 beat out Red Dead Redemption 2, a game that I would say is actually bigger, honestly, to a certain extent anyway, than, or at least on the same level as Cyberpunk 2077. And I said this before, I'll say it again, what God of War did in 2018, winning Game of the Year, is the gaming industry equivalent of literally killing a god. So it's kind of fitting. That's all I have to say about the Game Awards. I have to move on here because this podcast is getting close to hitting the 2-hour mark. Okay. I'm always trying not to let my voice completely give out when I'm doing these podcasts, but I don't want to speak too quietly. But we're going to move on to the third topic, guys. We're already over 667 likes, which is awesome. Still 1,100 people here hanging out with me and listening in. Be sure to hit that like button, guys. Let's see if we can get to 700. Let's see if we can possibly get to 750 likes. It really helps the podcast out, helps it get it out there to more people, to new audiences. Topic number 3, speaking of God of War, Jim Ryan recently refused to answer if God of War Ragnarok will be a cross-gen title or a true PS5 exclusive. He really didn't say anything. When he was asked that question, he literally just said that I'm not talking about that right now. And this obviously has caused a lot of speculation. So we have to, we have to look at more of what he's saying here. Brittany Goes Meow, you're saying Wild. Isn't that, I think that's a game, right? That's that game that apparently no one knows if it's still in development. Yeah, maybe we could see that. That would be interesting. We'll have to wait and see. Thank you for the super chat, guys. So Jim Ryan also said in regards to cross-gen titles, the first thing to say is that our PS5 experiences or versions of these games are built from the ground up to take advantage of the PS5 feature set. So I think offering PS5 versions of these games for the PS5 community and then a PS4 version of these games to the PS4 community, I don't see what's wrong with that. Now, obviously, a lot of people are not too thrilled to hear what he had to say about this, so I want to give my thoughts on it. First of all, God of War. I'm going to be totally honest with you guys, and I also want to set the expectation to everybody here. I want to let you know what my expectation is personally. God of War, in my opinion, Ragnarok, will 100% be a cross-gen title. I think it's kind of obvious. It seems clear to me that the games that Sony wants to keep as PS5 exclusives right now are either games that they think are more in line with the hardcore PlayStation audience, example, Demon Souls, a game that's going to sell well, but at the same time, it's not one of these big hitter games that they need to worry like Demon Souls could have sold 10 million copies, but it won't because it's not on PS4. It's possible, just not likely. To whereas you look at games like Horizon Forbidden West, Spider-Man, God of War, all games that are certainly going to sell 10 million copies. Leo Jimmy, thank you for the generous super chat. You're saying, I just hope Ghosts wins. Sucker Punch has finally hit the AAA status with Ghosts and will ascend to the same level as other big dogs at Sony. Sony developers are in competition with themselves. 7 years Xbox hasn't had a win. You know what? I agree 100%. Just going back to that topic for a second here. I do appreciate what you're saying because I've actually been saying that for some time about Sucker Punch as a studio, is that I always thought that they were held in very high regard. People love Infamous and their previous work, but I looked at Ghost of Tsushima and I'm like, this is the game. This is the game that basically pushes Sucker Punch to that next level where they're looked at, on the same level as Sony Santa Monica, Naughty Dog, Guerrilla Games. You look at what happened with Guerrilla Games with Horizon. That was the game that pushed them up to that next level. Naughty Dog has been at that level for some time, basically with the Uncharted series, even for some people with Jak and Daxter. You look at Sony Santa Monica, they've always been held in very high regard, but God of War, no doubt, pushed them to that next level that they were so close to being at. And I feel like Ghost of Tsushima 100% did that for Sucker Punch as well. So thank you for that super chat, man. I agree 100%. I would love to see Ghost of Tsushima win. And, I take it back. I would make a video if Ghost of Tsushima won, only because I would be stunned. The reason why I say I wouldn't make a video if The Last of Us 2 won is just because it's like, did anybody not see that coming? You know what I mean? I'll still probably make a video on it, but I'm just saying it wouldn't be surprising. Ghost of Tsushima beating out The Last of Us would be kind of shocking to me. It genuinely would. So, but getting back on topic here, again, thank you for the super chat, man. I want to let you know that I 100% expect God of War Ragnarok to be cross-gen. And, we've talked about this at length before. It's like, but MBG, weren't you completely against cross-gen games? And I have to be honest with you guys, my perspective and my perception of cross-gen games has simply changed. It changed because after playing Demon Souls, well, Demon Souls is actually a bad example because it is PS5 only, but let's be real, Demon Souls could play on the PS4. It's a PS3 remake. It's very clear that Sony purposely chose to keep it PS5 only. Again, because I think that they're looking at it as like it's more for the hardcore audience, and they know that the hardcore audience, that's the one that's buying the PS5 day one, and looking for those games day one. But specifically Spider-Man Miles Morales, look, from a gameplay perspective, I think it's kind of obvious, and I could be wrong about this. These are the inner workings of Sony that I don't know about, and neither do you. Frankly, unless you work at Sony and you work at Sony at a high level and you're involved with these executive meetings and you talk to the studios and you basically are in control of these studios, I don't know what Sony's stance is, and I don't think anybody does. From the outside looking in, it's clear that they're all for cross-gen games right now. Jim Ryan says that these games are built from the ground up utilizing PS5's features. So I can only assume that if a studio, say like Sony Santa Monica, developing God of War Ragnarok, if they were taking as full advantage of the PS5 as they could, and they were trying to do something from a gameplay design standpoint, similar to Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, that can only really be achieved, realistically speaking, on the PS5, and they went to Sony and said, we can't make this game cross-gen because what our vision means it's only going to be PS5. I want to believe, based off of Jim Ryan's comments, that they would be like, okay, so that's what's going to happen. It's going to be PS5 only. However, we can't, we have to be honest here. There's a pretty decent chance that Sony's like, no, Ratchet and Clank can be PS5 only because we don't need that game to sell 10 million copies. That's not one of our big hitting games, at least on the same level as, say, God of War. The next God of War, yeah, we need that to release on PS4 because we need those sales. So I'm not saying that's what Sony's doing because I do not know. I want to believe that it's up to the developer. I want to believe that if God of War releases on PS4, it's because it can run on PS4, not because it's purposely being released on PS4 and therefore potentially being held back to some degree. What I know for a fact is that after playing something like Spider-Man Miles Morales, I'm much more at ease when it comes to cross-gen games. Roshi Dom V2, you're saying PS5 has a 90 million install base. It would be leaving too much money on the table. I do agree. Like from a business standpoint, Jim Ryan's comment here, he says he wants to make a version. What is interesting, I want to tell you this too. There actually, when you read this comment from Jim Ryan, maybe there is something more to be extracted here. Jason, you're saying, what's the chances of a reboot for Resistance in the future? Very high. Very high. I say that because if Moore's Law is dead as anything to go by, he has been correct numerous times. If he's anything to go by, his words, and we're going to talk more about this at the end, his words are something along the lines of, if there's a game that you think Sony's making, they probably are. It's probably in development. His words. So, and he's been correct about numerous things so far. Sorry, I keep having to take a drink here. I hate that my voice goes, man. I'm not even yelling. My voice just becomes hoarse, and I get annoyed because I have so much more I want to say, but I literally feel like my voice gives out. I should have made tea today instead of rant juice. But what I think can be extracted from this, potentially, I could be reading into it too much, but the way he words this is interesting because he says, he reaffirms that PS5 experiences and games are being built from the ground up for the PS5. I don't doubt that, okay? The PS5 dev kit has been in the hands of Sony's first party for some time now. When he says, I think offering a PS5 version of these games for the PS5 community and then a PS4 version of these games, I don't see what's wrong with that. Now, look, I say I might be reading way too much into this because that could almost be interpreted as maybe Sony is willing to make two different versions of these games. And maybe it's not too hard to do that. Maybe it's not. Maybe it just takes a little bit of extra development time. But if you think about it, that would be worth it for Sony. So let's just throw out an example here. Let's take Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. Okay, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, as of right now, Insomniac confirmed it's PS5 only. What if Sony said, look, we really want this game to have a PS4 version? So then Insomniac goes, well, we maybe could do that. The problem is it would take more development time and we would have to go back and literally manually change certain sections of this game to make it run or to make it work at all on the PS4. Maybe that's not as intensive as we think it is. I mean, it will take manpower, it will take dev time, it will take money. Time is money in this case, but maybe that's totally worth it. So if you play the PS4 version, maybe in some areas it's just way different. Like there's just different areas, different sections, or different areas that are utilizing the SSD are actually completely altered to just change the overall flow of the game. Maybe we could see them do that. Now, do I think that's what he's hinting at here? Not necessarily. Joshua, you're saying if coffee is rant juice, then what is the tea? Discussion drink? I don't know. I'll let you guys come up with the name of the tea because the tea is specifically meant to help my throat and my voice. So you can, I'm sure somebody can come up with something clever, but you know, you're saying by design, good luck with the portals, LOL, jump to one portal, loading 25 seconds versus 2 seconds. Yeah, that's the thing, man, is like that right there is where you know, that's where I don't know. I like Sony may have like literally just talked to Insomniac and they're like, so are we releasing this game on PS4? And they're like, yeah, we can't do that with this game. And they're like, are you sure? And they're like, yeah, we definitely can't. And like, all right, PS5 only then. For maybe that is Sony's approach. Like maybe the games that we're seeing released on PS4 just aren't taking advantage of the PS5 in that way yet. We do have to understand that all these games that we're talking about, like people were kind of shocked when they were like, the T is rant reverser. Nah, I don't know about that. I'm not reading some of these responses. I think like people were very shocked to find out that specifically Horizon Forbidden West was going to come to PS4 because it seemed like that was going to be one of the first games to take full advantage of the PS5. But what we do have to understand is that, work on a Horizon sequel, work on Horizon Forbidden West, no doubt started probably before Horizon was even finished, the first one, or very shortly after. So if you think about Horizon being released in early 2017, then the majority of this game's development took place on the PS4. We did hear that this game was actually meant to release before the PS5 came out, but Sony decided maybe we should save it for the PS5 and give them more dev time. And that's what they did, if rumors are to be believed. So the idea that they're just suddenly going to be able to fundamentally change the game's design, and that would literally require them to scrap everything they did on the PS4 and just start exclusively on the PS5, which would basically render everything they did up until they got PS5 dev kits useless. At least that's my understanding of it. So it makes sense, believe it or not, that a game like Horizon can run on the PS4. I don't think it's being held back. You could argue that the devs just simply didn't have the time necessary to basically rethink the game's fundamental design, because the game's fundamental design from the floor up was made in mind with the PS4. So if, we could see a different scenario where maybe rather than getting a cross-gen version of Horizon Forbidden West, maybe they had the option. Maybe they could have, redeveloped the game from the ground up on just the PS5 and take full advantage of it and rethink the game's design. But because of that, we probably wouldn't get Horizon Forbidden West until maybe sometime in 2022. Some people would want that, others would not. I would argue maybe we just see the truest PS5 version. See, I don't want to say it that way because that makes it sound bad. Maybe we're not going to see a studio like Guerrilla Games take full advantage of the PS5 for a series like Horizon until the third game. And because of how rapid game development can be on the PS5, maybe that comes a lot sooner than we think. Maybe we're not waiting 3 years for Horizon 3. Maybe we're waiting 2 years, 2.5 years, potentially. It depends. That does, kind of, I think also apply to God of War. God of War finished development in 2018. So here's the point. All right. I do believe that Sony Studios, we have to understand, like they are the most talented in the industry. They have some of the most talented developers there, some of the smartest minds making games. I think we have to be more understanding of the fact that engine overhauls are kind of a thing that need to happen for Sony. And I think they are happening slowly, but that's the thing is like, in order for them to really kind of take full advantage of the PS5, there's just going to have to be some huge changes made to all these game engines that are currently built to work on the PS4. And so in order to kind of like modify them and maybe even completely redo them to get them to just be fully, tuned for the PS5, that's going to take some time on top of them developing the game. So I don't know. It's a tough thing because it's like we don't know all of the details. So iSiler18, you're saying I think Naughty Dog's next game will be an actual next gen game, PS5 only. I think so too. I really do. I think maybe if they make this, whenever they release this multiplayer Last of Us game, that could potentially be. I think that's going to be cross gen. I think it makes a lot of sense for that to be cross gen. But I think their next proper new IP, whatever it may be, will be next gen only. And look, the reality is this: Sony plans to support the PS4 up until 2022. Even Jim Ryan said himself that he doesn't expect games to take full advantage, their games anyway, to take full advantage of the PS5 until 2022. And do you know why that is? It's not because the games are being held back. I really do think it's from a game engine level. Like, I think right now there's a ton of work being done to the Decima engine, for example, to basically tune it to the PS5. But, we're not going to be able to see that engine, that's fully tuned for the PS5 and completely no longer tuned for the PS4. I don't think we're going to see that engine finished fully until, or those updates to the game engine finished fully until 2022 or beyond that, and I think that goes for each developer. If you look at Miles Morales is interesting because that's basically like a test bed, right? Like that's like Insomniac showing like we're just trying, like this is our first foray into trying to squeeze what we can out of the PS5. And Ratchet and Clank is interesting because they're squeezing something specific out of it that you can't get out of the PS4 at all. And so that's kind of my thought on this whole cross-gen situation. Like, I've just accepted that Sony has embraced cross-gen games. That doesn't mean every game is going to be cross-gen. And I know that there are people who are like, I will not play God of War if it's cross-gen. Like, fine, you don't play God of War, man. I'm playing God of War Ragnarok no matter what. That game could come out on the PS3. It's going to be a great game regardless, okay? It can't come out on the PS3, but I'm exaggerating here. But that doesn't mean that I don't want to see more PS5 only games. I want to see games that are taking full advantage of the PS5. I just think the reality is starting to set in that, work has to be done to these game engines. These game engines are fully tuned and optimized to work on the PS4. That's what they were built for. Now they're going to be they're going to be reworked over time to take full advantage of that IO throughput, take full advantage of that SSD. And it's also going to be up to the developers as well to really kind of think about what major gameplay changes they are necessary for their game. You don't want to force it if it's not necessary. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting, guys. We're going to have to see what Sony's plans are. I would say, and this is where I'm going to end this topic, anticipate that Sony's going to continue to do cross-gen games, at least for the bigger titles, the ones that are clearly going to sell the most, until 2022. But I do think, and one last side note I want to add to this, I do think that, just PlayStation 5 sales in general, I think those are going to play a huge role in whether or not Sony decides to go with, more cross-gen games or not. If they have a ton of PS5s that they need to sell and they can sell, and, PlayStation 5 sales are maybe slowing down a little bit, then they're probably going to be like, you know what, make God of War exclusive because we want to sell PS5s like now. If they can still sell a ton of PS5s, while still making cross-gen games, and these cross-gen games are selling like millions of copies on PS4, then it's kind of understandable why they're going to continue to do that. So we have to wait and see, guys. We have to wait and see. But we're going to move on to the next topic. If you could do me a favor, hit that like button, guys. You're crushing it. We're already over 750 likes. Let's see if we can get it to 800 likes. That would be great. Let's see if we can get 800 likes. I'll take another sip here. Yeah, we're moving on to the... Oh, okay. So this isn't a full-blown topic in it of itself, but it is something I just wanted to attach to this before moving on, because it is relevant to God of War Ragnarok, or at least Sony Santa Monica. Apparently, Alana Pierce, I'm sure many of you know who she is. She actually announced recently that she was hired by Sony Santa Monica as a writer, and it's kind of a big deal. Like a lot of people were, surprised by that. I mean, it is kind of surprising. I did not expect that to be her next job. Um, and so I don't know what her writing credits are. Like, I'm not familiar. I'm gonna assume they're pretty good if she got hired, to work on one of Sony Santa Monica's IP. The assumption is that she's now writing God of War Ragnarok. I don't think that's the case. I could be wrong. I think it's much more likely she's probably working on the new IP that I think is sci-fi themed from Sony Santa Monica. So, it'll be interesting. I will say, I don't think Alana Pearson, I think she liked The Last of Us, but not that much. Like, I think she had, I could be wrong. Maybe one of you can, she's a junior writer, not a senior. Okay. Maybe one of you guys can let me know, though. I'm pretty sure she was not a big fan of The Last of Us story. I'm only mentioning that because, I think that's fine. I think that's fine. So I just wanted to kind of throw that in here because that kind of came out of nowhere. So that's really cool for her. It'll be interesting to see how prominent of a role she gave The Last of Us 2 story a 7 out of 10. Yeah, okay. So Alana is an Xbot. No, I don't think she's an Xbot. I don't agree with everything she has to say, but she's entitled to her opinion, just like I am mine. And, there's nothing wrong with having a difference of opinion, but it is kind of ironic that, I will say, it is very ironic that, everybody was like, she's a huge Xbox fangirl or whatever, because she made that, she made that video, defending Game Pass, and everybody was like, you work for Microsoft and whatnot. And it's like, everybody was like, you didn't get a PS5. You didn't get a PS5 because Sony doesn't like you because you're an Xbot. And it's like, actually, she didn't get a PS5 because she literally got hired by Sony. I thought that was really funny. But yeah, good for her. That'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next topic here. And this is one I'm not going to spend too much time on, but I definitely want to give it a little bit of time in the podcast here, because I do think it's important. And I'm going to be interested to see what you guys have to say about this one. For those who question Sony's commitment to the console gaming market, I want to read a quote from Jim Ryan that came out this week. And so this is what he said. It seems that I've spent most of my life at PlayStation listening to people tell me that this generation is going to be the last one because something else is going to make the console model redundant. I'm sure these people are really wise and really intelligent, but to date, they haven't been correct. Now, I have something to say about that quote, but he continues on here. Elsewhere, Jim Ryan reiterated that PlayStation Now and PlayStation Plus are important services, and although Sony is currently focused on the PS5 and its games, that doesn't mean the company isn't thinking deeply about our services and figuring out some quite interesting stuff that'll get its own moment in the limelight. Very interesting stuff Jim Ryan is saying here. I think this is interesting because, first of all, I really want to say that I know not everybody's a big fan of Jim Ryan. I really genuinely appreciate what he had to say about the console space, basically pointing out what we've all said for so long, and that is, look, how many generations has it been that, consoles are becoming irrelevant, consoles are on their way out, nobody cares about console gaming anymore, blah, blah, blah. This generation's going to be the last one, at least for PlayStation. I can't really speak to Xbox. You look at Nintendo, you look at Sony, they're both doing well. I don't know what's going on with Xbox. Maybe this generation will be much better sales-wise for them. But I love this because he's basically saying, look, they're not listening anymore. They're not following what what the trends are supposed to be. They're sticking to the console and they're supporting the console. Now, I do think what he says here at the end is interesting. He also says that, look, we have services, and these services are vital to the PlayStation brand. PlayStation Plus, PlayStation Now. The most interesting thing he said here was how he says they're thinking deeply about their services and figuring out quite interesting stuff that will get its own moment in the limelight. He says this at the same time in another interview when asked about Game Pass, saying that they have a response to Game Pass lined up. They're just not ready to talk about it yet. Like, this is, I don't want to say concerning. Okay, it might be. It might be. It might be. It depends. I don't want to say it's concerning because I don't want to jump to the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario being that Sony decides Game Pass is our future too. Here's PlayStation Game Pass, all of our first party titles. And I know what people are going to do. They're going to freak out and they're going to be like, MBG, what are you, an idiot? That's the best deal ever. Could you imagine getting games like Demon Souls and God of War Ragnarok and Horizon Forbidden West day one on PlayStation Game Pass for just $10 a month? And my answer to that would be no. I couldn't imagine that, because how is Sony going to keep that quality up with offering these games at such a low price? He even said it himself. The reason why I'm not worried is because we're going to find out if Jim Ryan really is a liar or not. I know some people believe he's genuinely a liar. We're going to see. I will give him the benefit of the doubt. Jim Ryan said earlier this year, he was asked directly about Game Pass, and he said that that's not something they're going to do. That model doesn't work for Sony. That model doesn't work for PlayStation. They don't see it being sustainable. Their games that they make are massive and very expensive, and he said that model may work for other companies, but it doesn't work for them. So that gives me hope that the response he's talking about is not them copying Game Pass. And as many people have let me know, they're like, look, man, you can have a response to Game Pass that isn't just like Game Pass. And I agree 100%. I agree 100%. And that's why I think when you pair that, idea that you can have a response that's not the same thing with what Jim Ryan said about Game Pass earlier this year, I think it's going to be something else. But that's what makes it so interesting, is what could it be? Now, my best guess here is that because they still care greatly about the console and they still care about console sales, which I'm very happy about. I want them to keep that up and continue to care a lot about the console. My best guess is that they're essentially going to really flesh out the PlayStation Plus collection, or basically create their own Game Pass competitor with PlayStation Now by creating this kind of hybrid, not a hybrid, but you're not going to see new games go into there, but you're going to see okay, let's take the entire PlayStation 4 catalog of exclusive games, not counting what came out this year, or maybe even counting this year, not counting Spider-Man. So we're talking Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us. I can't speak for Final Fantasy VII Remake because they don't have complete control over that. Lee Bull, thank you so much for becoming a member, buddy. Welcome to the channel. I really do appreciate that. Appreciate all the support you guys have been showing. A lot of membership upgrades today, a lot of new members. Thank you, man. Look forward to your exclusive perks. Welcome to the membership club. So thank you. JD Gamer, you're saying prediction PS5 will have more Game Pass-like service. Microsoft Xbox Series X tools will mature much like the PS3 tools did, and the power difference will become noticeable in the later half of the generation in good games. That's certainly an interesting prediction. I think Sony could have a Game Pass-like service, except the only real difference is that you get new games much later, if that makes sense. When it comes to the maturation of Xbox Series X tools and eventually actually leading to a noticeable difference, that's possible for sure. Like, that's what I've reiterated in all these videos that I talk about this, where I say, look, like, we don't know what the game comparisons are going to look like a year from now, let alone 2 to 3 to 4 years from now. It could very well end up being that Microsoft's promise of games looking best and running best will be fulfilled, just not till later. But you see, the problem is, why should people have to wait when you're selling them on that now? You know what I mean? If they should kind of maybe add a little caveat to that, that like games will look and play best on Xbox Series X eventually. You see what I mean? Like that, it's a little bit misleading. But when it comes to the Game Pass like service, look, I do think that Sony's going to do something. I don't know exactly what it could be, but I imagine it like this. Let's say early next year they announce uh I don't know what it would be called. I mean, PlayStation Pass. I don't know. Like, hopefully they don't. If whatever it is, if it's a new service, they name it something better than that. Because that's just I mean, they'll get ripped to shreds for copying Game Pass. But it just humor me here. They announce early next year PlayStation Pass. Now, what is PlayStation Pass? It's basically another layer of PlayStation Now, where you get access to all of those games. Some games rotate in, some games rotate out. However, the big difference with PlayStation Pass, PlayStation Platinum, yeah, that could be one. To be honest, they're probably just gonna. Maybe they could. You know what I could see them do? I could see them renaming PlayStation Now. I really could see them doing that, or just keeping it that. But he really is making it sound like it's going to be like a new service of some sort. But what I could see happening is they're going to announce that the entire back catalog. Well, okay, this is where things get really confusing for me, because I was going to say they're going to announce they're going to put their entire back catalog of PS4 exclusives into this service that you get access to for $10 a month. But then I think, then what the hell is the point of the PlayStation Plus collection? You know what I mean? So, okay, maybe it'll be the PlayStation Plus collection. Maybe with the PlayStation Plus collection, they're going to announce that the entire back catalog of PS4 exclusives, aside from Spider-Man Miles Morales, is going, and Sackboy are going into this service. That would be huge. And at the same time, I think that would be a huge success for them, because, like, let's be honest right now, how many people are still, well, I don't know. See, I don't know, man. I was going to say how many people are still buying Ghost of Tsushima, but then I realized, like, I have no clue. They announced that it sold over 5 million copies, so clearly people are still buying it. So maybe a couple more million people are going to buy it. So maybe it would make no sense to put that. I don't know, guys. Like, I don't know. I guess I want to ask the chat this before moving on to the final topic. We established that Sony can have a Game Pass competitor without copying Game Pass, but what does that look like? That's the thing I can't really make out in my head. Like, I don't know, because what is the biggest allure to Game Pass? You could say the quantity of games for how little you pay for it, but you can already get that with PlayStation Now. So in that sense, they already do have a competitor. So the only other aspect to this is the other allure to Game Pass is all of Microsoft's games day one for $10, and any new games that come out. Yeah, first party, that's the allure. So I don't know what Sony's response could be without copying, Saying PlayStation Now is fine as they don't need a Game Pass like strategy. Well, whether they feel like they need it or not, I don't know, man. Games need to pass a certain amount of sales numbers and then they add it to the service. Yeah, that could work. Maybe that could work. Maybe it could be different for each game. When God of War hits 10 million. But what happens when they have a game that just like keeps going, like Spider-Man? Like Spider-Man sold 20 million copies, Like if their goal was to reach 10 million sales with Spider-Man, and then they put it in, and then when they put it in, they just lost 10 million more sales. You see what I'm saying? So I don't know, man. I don't know. I really don't know. I guess if I had to just take one, like, just overarching guess here, or arcing guess, that, okay, here we go. Chris B are saying maybe he's talking about xCloud, PS Now coming to iOS and Android. Yeah, that could be something, but that's not necessarily a competitor to Game Pass. You see what I'm saying? That's an xCloud competitor. The Wonderful Gaming Co., you're saying really don't want a PlayStation Game Pass. I like to own my games, not rent them. Sad time for me though. Got coil wine and I'm waiting on a replacement console. That sucks, man. Sorry to hear that. I would have to hear what this coil wine sounds like because the only thing I ever hear from my console is when the disc is spinning and then it just stops and I only hear it for a little bit. So I don't know what the coil wine sounds like. But yeah, I'm going to be paying close attention to that. All I'm going to say is this. I'm going to be really upset with Sony, like really upset if what Jim Ryan's hinting at here is legitimately like, you're saying watch Mystic's video. Did he talk about this? I wonder what his opinion of it was. I must have missed it. I usually watch his content. He does really good content. I guess I would assume that it's not going to be a straight Game Pass competitor, as in like we're copying Game Pass. But I hope that they don't take the Microsoft route because that would be kind of devastating to me. It's clear that Sony kind of backtracked on their whole cross-gen approach. So it is what it is. But if they backtrack on their Game Pass approach, that I'm not going to be happy about. But really quick, guys, can you tell me in the chat, how is this stream looking? Because on my end, it says it's buffering on my screen. Let me know if the chat's still smooth for you. We're going to move on to the final topic. And then after the final topic, we're going to do a short Q&A. Everything seems to be... I think everything's okay with the stream. Uh-oh. Stream is going. Oh, here we go. All right, well, I don't know what's causing that. Okay, everybody's saying it's buffering. It's buffering like crazy. All right, I'm going to give it a minute to see. I don't know. I never have these issues. Let me just give it a minute here and see if it sorts itself out. I don't want to have to I really don't I don't want to have to end this podcast early like I did last week because it's going pretty well and I just wanted to finish my last topic. All right, look, I'm just going to keep going then and hopefully it's okay. If it continues to buffer like that, maybe I'll just remove the gameplay to maybe lighten the load. I don't know if it'll make any difference, but all right. Let's continue on here. Final topic of the day. Hit that like button, guys. We're almost at 850 likes. Let's see if we can get to 900 likes before we get to the Q&A, if that's possible. Maybe I just had a little bit of a strain on my internet connection there for some reason. But, all right, so this last topic is something I'm very excited to discuss. I'm not going to talk about it for too long because it is a rumor, and I may make a separate video on this. It really depends, but a new Metal Gear Solid game is apparently in the works, and Blue Point Games is developing it, at least according to Moore's Law is Dead. Not only has he continued to reiterate that Sony has held back and saved a lot of game announcements, but he also teased a Metal Gear Solid on a recent episode of his podcast, and he teased it once again on his Twitter account. And he tweeted at Blue Point Games, and he said, "Great job with the Demon's Souls remake. Can't wait to play the next solid game you guys are working on," with a wink face. Now, in his podcast, he also hinted at Metal Gear by saying that he believes some solid games are going to slither out sometime next year. Now, guys, you look at my avatar on the channel, it's Snake. Metal Gear Solid is my favorite game franchise of all time, right next to Dark Souls. And I got to tell you that I really, really, really want this to be true. I want this to be real. I want it to be true. And I believe Moore's Law is dead because he has been saying, "I see that, MBG." Yeah. Moore's Law is Dead has been correct about a lot of stuff. A lot of the information he's received over the past year, I think, has turned out to be like dead on. And one of the things he was correct about was God of War. He said that the next God of War is much further along in development than people think. It's going to be revealed before the end of the year, and it's blowing people away. And it's going to be releasing in 2021. And so the only thing that hasn't come true yet is us actually seeing the game, like physically seeing gameplay. But he said that that might come later, maybe the Game Awards. But he was correct about everything else. Brandon, you're saying MBG's 8 kids are hogging the internet, need to get into them Minecraft servers. yeah, that's probably what it is. But I believe him, man. And this is not the first time we're hearing this rumor about Metal Gear. Okay, we've heard this from Red Gaming Tech as well. And I believe Red Gaming Tech has been correct about some stuff. Now, it's interesting because these guys are not out here basically saying, believe me, it's going to happen. No, they're not. They're saying this is the information they've been told, and they do trust these sources. Guys, that if this is true, I'm going to lose it. I'm going to lose in a good way. I'm going to lose it because the thought of playing a Metal Gear Solid game on the PS5 that's a PS5 exclusive, and here's the thing. Blue Point Games, look at what they did with Demon Souls. Look at their history as well. Like, they already did work on Metal Gear before. It makes a lot of sense. And Blue Point has actually teased this out before. It would also make even more sense if this is why Sony wants to acquire them as well, because they're like, look at what these guys are doing. They're so good at what they do. Like, they look at the back catalog of games. I know that the Metal Gear IP is not owned by Sony, but still, it's heavily associated with the PlayStation brand. So I really do hope that Metal Gear is real. I know that there's a lot of people who are like, look, Metal Gear needs to stay dead. It needs to stay buried. We don't need Konami ruining it. But I will admit that, like, I do agree. Like, I don't know that we ever need a Metal Gear Solid 6. If we ever were to get a Metal Gear Solid 6, I would only feel comfortable with Sony developing it. I know it's not even Kojima, and I know that a lot of people are like, what? A Metal Gear Solid game without Kojima? That's blasphemy. But, you know, like, I would like to see the Metal Gear IP live on. We know that Kojima couldn't develop Metal Gear forever. So if it could go to Sony and get Kojima's blessing, I'd be happy with that, you know? And if Blue Point wants to make it, it doesn't have to be Metal Gear Solid 6, though. I think it's actually much, much, much more likely it's going to be a remake or maybe even a collection of some sort. But I think a remake is more likely because you look at Demon Souls, like, that's a remake, okay? Like, it is very similar, but also not similar at all to the PS3 version, if you think about it. So Blue Point Games working on a Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, 3, or even 4. I don't think it'll be a Metal Gear Solid 4 remake, but I really hope it happens, man. I want to see Metal Gear live on in some way, and I think that the best way it could live on right now is looking at Blue Point's pedigree for remaking games and looking at how amazing games can be look and be remade on the PS5. A Metal Gear Solid 1 remake as a PlayStation 5 exclusive, man, that would be something else, wouldn't it? So, you know, it is interesting that Moore's Law is dead. He continues to let us know that Sony has a plethora of games that are in development behind the scenes right now that Sony has saved. He did go on record, I believe, saying that Sony was planning on revealing more of these games this year, but the reason why they decided not to was because they realized that Microsoft doesn't have anything. They knew that they were going up against Halo, so they had some big things prepared to go against Halo. I'm assuming maybe that was, like, reveal-wise anyway, I'm assuming maybe that was God of War. But he said that, you know, Sony was concerned that Microsoft had some secret exclusives they were hiding and they were going to reveal at the last moment, and Sony wanted to save something to compete against that. But because they didn't, they're not really that eager to reveal all of these games. However, again, it seems likely they're going to reveal something at the Game Awards, possibly Silent Hill, maybe this Metal Gear game. Whatever it is, I think it's going to, you know, shock and surprise people in a good way. But, yeah, I guess the last thing I want to say on it is he also did hint, Moore's Law is dead, that is, he hinted at a Killzone game that's in development. And he also said, as I mentioned earlier, that if there is a game that you think may be in development or that has any chance of being in development, it most likely is. That's how many games Sony has in development. So, yeah, I just find that very interesting. I wanted to just end on that note because it's a rumor. We have to take it as a rumor, but I think that would be a huge win for Sony. Huge win for Sony. I'll be jumping for joy if that happens. But with that being said, guys, we are going to move on to the Q&A. I can't promise that I can last very long with the Q&A because my voice is really starting to go. So feel free to ask me your questions in the chat and make sure you hit that like button, guys. We're so close to 900 likes. Let's see if we can get this podcast to 900 likes before it ends. So that way it's much easier to get to that 1,000 like mark. So feel free to ask your questions. I will attempt to answer them to the best of my ability. Take a sip here. That is if you guys even have any questions. Did I play the Metal Gear Twin Snakes? I didn't actually. I wanted to, but I never did. Hold on, guys. Please give Final Fantasy VII Remake a try and try to do a review of it and give the Final Fantasy series a try. Please answer why you don't cover Final Fantasy news. It's as simple as I'm just not a fan. I've never been a fan of Final Fantasy, and I'm not saying that it's not something I couldn't enjoy. It's just, at least as of right now, I'm having a really difficult time finding enough time to play all the games I want to play. So I'm not saying never. It's just right now it's not in the cards. Who do you think the bosses will be in God of War? Well, I think it's obvious that Thor is going to be the main guy. Other than that, I have no idea. But I can tell you that I think a boss fight between Kratos and Thor is possibly going to be one of the most epic boss fights in the history of gaming on the PS5. Like, I imagine what they could do with that, man. How many teams do you think Bluepoint has, and how many projects can they handle at once? Yeah, that's the big question. So the Metal Gear thing isn't actually too surprising because Demon Souls has been in the works for quite some time, and apparently it's been close to finished for some time because it was actually supposed to release on PS4, but they decided to move it over to the PS5. So if that was the case, then they probably had a smaller team kind of polishing it, finishing it up. And they probably moved on to their next project a little while ago, which could have very well been Metal Gear if that rumor's true. So I don't know. I think Bluepoint is probably the size of like a regular AAA team, maybe a smaller AAA team. But I think they're pretty big. How many different separate teams they have, I'm not sure. Do you think Demon Souls is too difficult? I don't think it's too difficult. I just think that there's a lot of strategy and planning involved. Which my problem when playing it recently was I keep trying to rush through it. And this is a game that you will not find any reward in rushing. You'll only find despair. MBG, the cable supplied with the DualSense controller for charging was not working on the front USB port of the PS5. Yeah, I don't know what's up with that. It worked for me. I don't know if that's like a problem that a lot of people are having. I've been okay with it though. You're asking how my TV is working for you. It's working good. It's working good. I'm sorry, guys. It's hard to keep up. My voice is so, like, my throat hurts right now. It really sucks. Yakarumi, you're saying, let me ask, have you seen TMNT with Megan Fox? If you have, how is it that it's Japanese, but the turtles have Italian names not related to games? I don't know, man. I've not seen that movie. That's a really random question. I don't know. I can't answer that. I don't know. It is a little strange, though. But MBG, Sony's response to Game Pass could be merging PlayStation Plus and PlayStation Now and dropping free online games like Destruction All-Stars and The Last of Us Online. That'd be great. That sounds ideal to me. That's a good one, actually. I think that could compete with Game Pass because there's a lot of value there, for sure. Especially with the idea of dropping multiplayer games in there for free. MBG, do you think Kratos will beat Thor? I don't know. I mean, your instinctive reaction is, of course, but I don't know, man. Kratos, he's getting old. The last game clearly showed that he's still a god, but He's slower to recover now, so I don't know, man. I don't know. See Atreus get some revenge. Yeah, Freya could be a boss fight in God of War as well. I didn't even think of that. Yeah. What genre are you absolutely awful at? I think fighting games. If I yeah, I don't know, racing or fighting games for me. You're saying yours is racing. I'm pretty decent at FPS, but I'm not that great at fighting games. Didn't they say they had like 100 or so working on Demon Souls? Yeah, but I don't think all 100 of those developers. I mean, I could be wrong. I would just assume that when they're getting close to finishing up the game, they don't have all hands on deck. It could be the other way around though. I think it just depends on like, you know, how many like when did the game really finish and like how much work needed to be done and how much polish. Do you need your whole team for that? So here we have a super chat from JD Gamer. You're saying Bluepoint Games has 90 employees, so it's a smaller dev. Okay. Also, what do you think about Microsoft buying up devs left and right? And what if they buy Sega or Capcom? I don't know, man. I don't like this idea of Microsoft just constantly eating up developers and buying them up. I think they need it to a certain extent, but you know, they can only go so far until it really starts to just feel like now you're just trying to monopolize, you know? So whoever they acquire next, I hope it's nobody major. You know, could they acquire Sega or Capcom? I think they could. I don't necessarily know that they will. I think they should try to do more organic growth, like Sony's been talking about. I really do. AMBG, do you think we'll get Horizon Forbidden West gameplay at the Game Awards? Yeah, I think that's likely as well. I know that we talked about God of War, but if you think about it, it would make sense to see Horizon gameplay first, wouldn't it? So I think so. Have I played Monster Hunter World? Looks great on PS5 in resolution mode with locked 60 FPS. I had played it. I had played Monster Hunter World. Fun game. Really enjoyed it. Haven't played it on the PS5 though. MBG, if Sony is able to get the rights for games from Konami, like Metal Gear Solid, what other Konami series would you like to see brought back? I think Castlevania would be interesting. I definitely want to see Silent Hill. I'm certain that's making a comeback though. So I think Castlevania would be good too. I'd be interested to see that. Do I think that there will be a Resistance reboot? Yes, I do think there will be. I certainly think so. MVG, rank the Metal Gear Solid games from favorite to least favorite. I can't do that, man. I can't. It's too hard. I can tell you, I think my favorite, it's so hard, man. Like Metal Gear Solid 2, I remember like the feeling I had after beating that game. Even though I wasn't the biggest fan of playing as Raiden, like my mind was so blown. Metal Gear Solid 3 was like on another level, but Metal Gear Solid 4, I can't do it. I can't do it. It's too hard. I can't rank them. I love them all. Metal Gear Solid 1, 2. I mean, it's like they're all next level, man. They're all next level. I think story-wise, I can easily say that 5 was my least favorite story-wise. Gameplay-wise, it was great though. Who is the better Catwoman, Halle Berry or Michelle Pfeiffer? I don't know. I guess Michelle Pfeiffer, you know, the original. I liked her in that. So, do you think Kratos will die in this series of games? I think so. I think so. I don't know. He's kind of a mascot though, isn't he? Can he die? I don't know. I hear that if you take out your external storage drive from your PS5 during test mode, it'll stop it from crashing in the future. It works. Huh. I don't have an external drive hooked up. So maybe. I got the PS5 since the 19th of November, and I already got the Platinum Trophy in Astro's Playroom and Spider-Man. Guess I'm addicted to the PS5. Yeah, congratulations, man. I'm slowly working on mine. Who do you think will win Game of the Year? God of War or Cyberpunk? In December 2021. I think God of War. I want God of War to win. Let me see. We also have a super chat. Desmond Smith, you're saying, are you going to be playing and streaming Cyberpunk if it comes out in December? I'm going to play it. I'm up in the air yet as to whether or not I plan to stream it. I mean, look, I might try to stream it if there's an audience that shows up for that, then sure, you know. But I really have to decide if for myself if that's a game I want to stream or not. So we'll see. I'll let you know ahead of time if I do. Do you think that Sony has secretly acquired WB Games? No, I do not. I do not. Whose superpowers would you rather have, Catwoman or Superman? I'm gonna have to go with Catwoman on this one. I mean, Superman, obviously. Is that even a question? MVG SOCOM reboot? I don't know. Apparently, it's looking more likely now that Guerrilla Games, the second team, is working on something Killzone related, not necessarily SOCOM related. So I would love to see a SOCOM reboot, though. Do you think Sony is going to buy big studios like Microsoft or keep on growing organically? I think right now it's much more likely they're going to grow organically. As I told you guys, we had this conversation. It may seem like Microsoft's number of studios is beginning to make the amount of studios that Sony has look like significantly less. I think it's like 14 compared to 23. But what most people are not aware of, that Sony's development teams are so big and so massive and still growing that they have basically second studios. So studios like Santa Monica, Guerrilla, Naughty Dog, they all basically have second teams that if they wanted, they could probably make separate studios and name it something else and just say it's a whole nother studio if they wanted. So that's what people need to be aware of. Let's see. I can take a couple more here. I'm hoping to get the PS5 on the 25th. Hopefully bots don't buy it out again. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's tough with these bots just buying up all the consoles. I feel sorry for people who are having like that much of a struggle. Shouldn't be that hard, you know? It's ridiculous. You think that these websites where they're ordering from and buying them from would have some type of extra measure to stop bots. You know what I mean? Just like confirm you're not a bot or a robot. But did you try the showcased DualSense effects in Astro's Playroom? I didn't play the specific one that says like, you know, it's meant to showcase the DualSense. I've just been playing the game. But so far, I'm very impressed. I'll have to get to playing that. Do I watch anime? Honestly, no, I don't. Microsoft has both bought studios and grown organically. They have 23 studios, but now they have 32 teams because many studios have grown to have 2 or 3 teams, a la Obsidian, Ninja Theory, Playground. Yeah, that's true too. It's not like Microsoft isn't growing. 32 teams, I don't know about that, but yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm not saying that Microsoft hasn't grown organically at all because they certainly have. It's just, I don't know, their organic growth, I guess you can say, hasn't been as strong or meaningful in the past like 5 to 7 years as Sony's. So we'll see. Also, like, we have to understand that they, you know, I know that Sony bought a lot of their studios, but Sony has been growing them since, you know, Microsoft bought Obsidian. So hopefully that means, and these other studios like Ninja Theory, hopefully that means they're going to be able to grow them even more, you know. Do I think The Last of Us or Ghost of Tsushima is winning Game of the Year? I think it's going to The Last of Us 2. When will you do more game streams? As of right now, I'm not sure, honestly. It's tough because, like, again, it's a balancing act on the channel. I will stream more games. It just might be a little bit more spread out. What I can say is I certainly will, like, anytime a new AAA game drops, like a big one, like if it's an exclusive, I'll definitely stream it. Or more than likely, I will stream it. And I may stream some other AAA big releases as well. At the very least, like an initial stream, you know, to see what the demand is. Like I'm waiting to see that game where it's like there's a game that drops where like there's high demand for people to watch me complete the whole game. But I don't know when that's going to happen. So we'll have to see. Oyakarumi, you're saying PlayStation is on top, but Big Brother Halo is coming, so beware. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know what to expect from Halo. What I do think is that 343 might be in some trouble if they drop the ball on Halo Infinite. And to be honest, I don't know what the confidence level is right now for Halo Infinite. So, MVG, you should give anime a try. They're great. Yeah, I mean, I know. I've watched, I think the only anime I've genuinely like watched the entire thing of is Cowboy Bebop. If there were 2 things you could change about the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, what would they be? PS5, I would want to change I'll probably give one thing for each. For the PS5, honestly, it would be the speaker to to be louder potentially, so that way I could actually use the built-in mic and feel like I can actually hear what people are saying to me. When it comes to the Xbox, just to be frank, I would want there to be more compelling games that I can only play on either the Xbox or PC. So, um, do you think we will see Elden Ring at the Game Awards? 100%. We need to see Elden Ring at the Game Awards. If we don't, then I'm going to be convinced that that game's like, I don't know, way further out than we could have thought. But yeah, that's going to do it, guys. I appreciate you guys being here. Obviously, my voice is pretty much gone, or at least it's about to be gone at this point. So, very long podcast, almost clocking in at 3 hours. So, thank you guys so much for being here with me and supporting the channel, continuing to support the podcast. Thank you to all my members, all my new members, those of you who actually upgraded your membership to support me even further. Thank you guys so much for that. You guys are absolutely awesome, and I couldn't do what I do without you. It's always fun to do these podcasts. I hope you did enjoy the topics. And I think that, I think there's some exciting times ahead. We'll see what the rest of November holds for us. I'm sure that there's going to be some other interesting things that come out over the next couple of weeks. We know December is going to be all about the Game Awards. And then we'll probably chill out a little bit towards the end of December. And then we're going to be, 2021 is going to be here before we know it. So it's been an intense year. I'm not going to speak as if the year's already over, but, I started the podcast this year, and here we are at episode 41, which is absolutely crazy to me. That's 41 weeks that we've been doing this. And I was honestly really unsure as to whether or not the podcast was ever really going to be successful, but you guys continue to show your support. And I just wanted to give a big thank you for that because, again, I had no idea we would make it this far, and I look forward to doing it every week. So anyway, I'm rambling at this point. Go buy some merch if you're interested. Oh, really quick as well before you guys go, for anybody who's interested, talking about merch for a second here, I'm Fave Cam. Yeah, MVG 2020. I meant to Poetry and Death. See you, man. Thank you for hanging out. Appreciate the super chats. I meant to talk about this at the beginning. I'm just going to have no choice but to plug it here at the end. I should have some Demon Souls like merch on the channel. It's nothing crazy, just some smaller stuff, some shirts and whatnot that you guys who are Demon Souls fans might be interested in. Obviously, I'll post about it when it's done and when it's out. And so I might do limited runs of it. I'm not sure. I don't know if I want to keep it up on the merch store permanently. So I'll work that all out. But I do want to let you guys know, I will have that coming. So, all right, guys, that's going to do it. Remember to leave a like on your way out. Hopefully we can get close to 1,000 likes. That really helps it out. But I'll see you here again next week. Same place, same time. And so until next time, guys, take care.